to? Hello, and welcome to Spotlight, the official podcast of Grapple. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
And we're here, JP, recording less than 24 hours after we last recorded. We're doing a graphy hour there with our patrons. We're fresh here at the start of a new month, or it will be by the time the audio listeners hear this on a fine August morning. It is, in fact, all in month, so get ready for us to bombard you with all in content, just so I can cash in the YouTube views like their actual money. But here we are, mate. It's a new month. How do we find you?
It's the calm before the storm, isn't it, mate? Because for video viewers, you can see that it's a packed month of all the stuff we're going to be doing. We're going to try and be more like Excalibur in terms of going through the plugs at this bit, because this is a week where there's loads to go into. But if you look behind me, you can see here we've got All In It. Have to start there. The sold out show at the Trinity Bar, Sunday the 27th, before All In itself. Then we're doing
good sign, JP, by the way, that we were canvassing our patrons yesterday on what the fuck we should talk about at All In It. I joke, we've got plans. We know what we're gonna do.
Oh yeah,
we think last show. They're coming together. Yeah. I'm still a little bit scared because it is gonna be weird. We're gonna be in a room it's gonna be the most people we've ever done. We've done 2 live shows before. This will be the first one with this many fucking people. Definitely over 100. We just don't know how many over 100 at this point, but it's getting a bit. I'm getting a bit nervous about it. It's like I've done speaking stuff in work in front of maybe not similar numbers, but not far away. But feels like a lot of people as well. A lot of people who know who we are as well. JP, it's gonna be I say it's gonna be great. It's gonna be knocking back beers and stuff like that and having a nice relaxing afternoon. But I don't know. You nervous about going on stage?
I reckon I'll be all right because I'll just treat it like it's a mega teach. That'll be the only way to do it. That's where I go to with it if ever I ever feel kind of worried, and then remember times I've had to kind of do a cool time in a pub and stuff like that and chat to a load of people.
Hey, we managed it in front of a room full of Germans,
yes.
And that was nerve-wracking because it was that was proper us making jokes about Brookside and EastEnders days, and it was like, are these going to get any of this? In the end, I told the story about almost getting robbed in America that they seem to find hilarious, and I think we made a couple of we still do all right in Germany based on the listener numbers. So I think we made some fans that day. So I think we can crack down. We can do anything, JP. I think we can.
Have to go back there.
Connor says here as well, yet actually don't forget about the people who've been dragged. So the plus ones, we'd have to make a room for the plus ones so they'll get bored by us doing our wrestling podcast, and they can come back for Davey and Braden and all the great stuff they're going to be doing on the Poison Rana side as far as the quizzes and live games and stuff like that. But maybe we'll need a crash for everyone's plus ones there.
It's frightening, isn't it, at this stage? I think the full gravity of the situation, everything else is like, oh, Christ, right. Have to behave like a real grown-up for this one and try and be organised.
No, I don't think anyone's coming to see that.
Right. That's it. It's good, but still absolutely buzzing about that as well. And then alongside it, in terms of other stuff that we're doing, if you can see behind me, and observe this from August 2018. I wonder what happened there. And then a flashback to All In 2018 as well. So going back and reviewing all of that show there. We're doing a mixtape for the best SummerSlam matches. Sorry, you were going to say something about the flash.
I was going to say the All In. I'm sorry, I'm not helping you do Excalibur here. Sorry, I've got too many points on this stuff. All In 2018, I can't. This is going to be fucking weird because we're going to be doing a flashback review on a show that we watched at the time and also reviewed at the time on a Spotlight. So as Garrett said yesterday on our Grappy Hour, we had 100% going to have to put those reviews side by side and find out how fucking stupid the things we probably said in 2018 were about what this big indie show All In actually meant. But I suppose we didn't know about millionaire Tony Khan sat in the stands at the time. Maybe we thought Dixie Carter was going to fund a wrestling promotion out of it. So I genuinely don't know. I don't know what we said, and I'm scared about what we said. So I'm going to wait until we've done the review to find any of that out.
Yeah, God, that's going to feel very, very odd because it was a different world at that point. Pandemics were the stuff of science fiction movies, the ones that didn't do well. Just to say, a lot changed, with sort of 18 months after that. So yeah, but really I can remember the night of watching it as well, with Joe and Sam and everything else. It was just it was wild. It was just a wild time in wrestling. It was exciting.
we were mere Brit Res podcasters at the time, JP. We didn't know what
yeah.
was to come. You know, we didn't know what our future was. Sliding doors.
Exactly. Sliding doors all the way. So yes, we so we're going to be looking at All In, I suppose present and past in there, potentially future. I suppose we'll be talking a little bit tonight. On the pre-show, you will have heard that we were talking through the King of the Mountain, Conor O'Loughlin, made his choice, and it's Christian's run in TNA as a deep cut, which I think is going to be fascinating because I think there's going to be like just loads of really interesting discussion points as well, and about how he was using WWE. Your thought going back and having a look at him again, like I think it's going to be interesting seeing what he is now at this particular moment in time, and seeing him then and thinking actually they could have leaned maybe more into that side of him. Various other things. That's going to be absolutely brilliant to do. Then we're doing this weekend, mixtape best SummerSlam matches, of which we've got 6 announced so far on there. I'm not going to go through them. You can listen to the pre-show for that one on there.
If you're a patron.
Yes, on the Patreon, patreon.com/grapple. Best SummerSlam matches, but the patrons are going to get to have your picks because you're not going to be on this one, and they get to choose your choices in there. So they've been doing that on the pre-show as well, which I do want to somehow name the Grappy Half Hour or something.
There you go. So patreon.com/grapple if you want some of that in August. Like I say, All In, SummerSlam, Christian. We're celebrating it all in August over here,
and doing a live show.
Yeah, fucking hell, it's gonna be a month, isn't it? We're also going to our patrons know we've making some changes on the Patreon side. The post show and the main show are going to be different files. I'm sure all those guys know that some changes to the daily updates as well. And yet, one other thing worth noting, if you hear JP talking there and thought, oh, I want to see that, and I want to see that live and in color. Well, you can either join us on the Patreon and watch us live every week, or starting this month. And I've kind of been doing it as like a trial over the last 3 weeks. The main show of Spotlight, so the bit you're listening to now on the free audio feed, we are now putting on the YouTube premiering day after, because you've got to have a bit of a time delay there. But it should be all 3 o'clock tomorrow, or today by the time you listen to this, the premiere of the video version. So if you want to fancy waiting a little bit and getting to see our pretty faces on video, not just in videos that are talking about Wembley ticket sales or talking about Wembley ticket sales, which are pretty much all we do on YouTube at this point, and a little bit of CM Punk talk sneaks in there as well. You can get that on the Grapple YouTube now. We're free for all, like I say, the main show. But if you want the full lot, you want the pre-show, you want to chat with us live, you want our daily updates, weekend show, and all of that stuff, you need to get the Patreon for that. And the other slight change that we've made, I know this was one that was a hard decision to make, but with the birth of Collision, and more to the point, language I'm using there, the birth of JP Jr., we did have to switch some things around with the schedule, and it's just, you will have noticed the last month or so our Dynamite reviews have pretty much been living on the Patreon weekend show. We're going to continue to do that going forwards, just to really spotlights have turned into the Collider show, really, where we mainly talk Collision here on Spotlight. And we do, we will continue to do like a broad overview of AEW in general and any big news stories that come out of Dynamite. But if you miss our kind of more match by match or more detailed review of Dynamite, that will be on the Patreon weekend show going forwards on Fridays. And again, where there's newsworthy stuff or where there's a big subject we talk about from Dynamite. If you're not a Patreon, we do put a lot of clips up on the YouTube as well, so you can see what you're missing there and catch up that way as well. Carl's making fun of our pretty faces here. I think we're pretty anyway. Let us know, YouTubers out there. But yeah, the other bonus as well, we are looking at we are making a bit of a go of the old YouTube thing. So the reason we put that on there as well is that we're going to be offering at some point a equivalent to Patreon membership service on YouTube that will probably start at some point in August. Stay tuned for when YouTube approve us and put us on there. But to tie in with that free for all as well on the YouTube, we'll be doing revamping and bringing back to life the business, the podcast with me and Matty. Plan is to do that live once a month over on the public YouTube for people to check out as well. So there's loads of moving plates there, JP, but lots to look forward to there. Lots positive to look forward to. Like I say, the live show coming up. Even talked yesterday about some merch ideas, and I know your brain's been busy working on all the brand and stuff, all of that stuff. So yeah, it's going to be a exciting month or two at Grapple Towers, I reckon, mate.
It is absolutely bonkers stuff, and then we're going to be talking loads about wrestling as well in the meantime, like we are this week. It's just fucking bonkers, mate. And we're going to, we're setting ourselves a time limit as well, getting everything into a tidy 2 hours. So, and fuck me, like, yeah, we'll see how long we stick to that one.
Yeah, well, again, that was something that came back, and obviously we did the survey, and people were, some of the 3-hour shows got a bit of negative feedback, but we tried to find a happy medium. So we probably expect the main spotlight show to be between 2 and 2.5 hours, for our sanity and yours as well. But I say that on a fire where people are probably listening, going, "There you go, they broke it in week one." But we'll see how we get on. But yeah,
3 hours 30 minutes.
But yeah, all of the good stuff over at patreon.com/grapple, including JP's now consolidated their news updates on a Wednesday as well. If you want more on that, patreon.com/grapple. But yeah, we should get into it, JP. There's a shitload of stuff happening in the rest of the world. We thought this was going to be an easy show to do, but yeah, we I don't know. There's nowhere else to start. And if you're sick of us talking about it, we will apologize. But it is August, which means it is Wembley month. And of course, we all know that, JP. Well, most of us, except for potentially Tony Khan, as we kind of ranted about on the weekend show and on the video that we have on YouTube, talking about Dynamite. But we do have to for the big month have to kick off with more Wembley talk. And yeah, there's plenty going on, JP. I don't know where to start, really. We suppose the big story is that Comcast is going to be airing All In as a pay-per-view. We know that now. That is a thing. And I know at a time of recording that Brandon Thurston has managed to confirm that not just Comcast, I think DirecTV have also got the show listed as a $50 pay-per-view in the US. So that's happening. So that answers one of our questions from Friday. And Dave Meltzer had the story as well. That sources were telling him that it was a $50 price tag, but that's been fully confirmed now. And we also know, on top of that, JP, when it comes to Wembley week, that Dynamite and Collision are going to be sharing some space, as Collision will be taped after Dynamite the week of All In. So that's quite notable, because we were wondering how that was going to happen. Obviously, I don't think any of us really expected their Collision taping in the UK the night before their big Wembley debut. They could have done it, other end of the country or something like that, or somewhere in London. But I mean, Tony Khan did say to Steph, didn't he, at the presser at the last pay-per-view, that no, that is absolutely the case. That they want their debut to be at Wembley rather than in Collision. So Duluth, Georgia, is getting the benefit of a Dynamite / Collision tape, in which, depending on how big All In turns out to be, could be a lot of big egos and big characters in the same building for that Dynamite / Collision taping. We hope. But I mean, before we get to the other stuff, JP, does that ease your concerns a little bit? Been a lot of hand wringing, a lot of talk from us. I've joked on Twitter, we're Brits, so as much as like we're following Dynamite, we were getting a little bit frustrated with the lack of announcements for All In, the lack of information about All In, the lack of urgency when it comes to All In. Collision has obviously happened since then, which we're going to get into, and I'm not sure Collision did a huge amount to allay those concerns. But do those news stories, make you think any bit differently about what this is? At least we now know what All In is, but it's a pay-per-view, but in America, we know that much.
Which, originally, when it was announced, there was the 100 years of Warner Brothers, the whole streaming service. He thought that was going to be the case. Apparently, he can't handle live streaming, so that would have been an option. There was Bleacher Report as well. That was obviously mentioned. Now it just appears to be, effectively just going on pay-per-view, because that's DirecTV who are talking about that as well. So at least on the American side, like, you can see where that's going to be. I mean, I would think for the areas of where there is the most growth, i.e. outside of the US and Canada, you'd want to have a look, and you'd want to see whether or not they'd be able to move, you know, they'd want to shift more, more tickets and have it on a platform here. But there's like kind of no word on that at the minute. So we don't have any word on how it's going to be shown over here at this point in time.
I'd assume fight at this point. It's fight.
I'd have to assume fight, which is terrible because most people in the UK don't know about fight. They know about things like Sky Box Office, even BT Box Office. They know about those kind of things for big like boxing events and everything else.
Yeah,
I've seen like the telly adverts during SmackDown on Saturday and things like that. And according to WrestleTix, the latest count is like 71,200 or around about that amount. Somewhere around that for the tickets they've sifted, with 77,000 in total. And we still don't have, we have hints at matches. We don't have matches. We spoke about it after Dynamite. There wasn't much happening on like Collision. And, I was thinking back to we spoke at the start, we did a town hall with all of our patrons. And we did a kind of little Q&A at the end. One of the questions we had was fantasy booking this card. And it was just like, right, we're just putting these two people together and doing that. And I almost just want them to I want something to feel excited about for this card. These aren't the kind of announcements that fill me with any kind of excitement whatsoever. They're just the things that you would expect a company that's competent to be able to do.
Well, like, I mean, that was going to be a big one of my points, excitement, because, like, for example, and we're going to get into it in a minute, don't get me wrong, Jeff Jarrett's over here doing like promo stuff, doing the rounds. Like we knew that last week, and that's clearly continued into this week. Posters are starting to pop up, on the tube and stuff. I think a couple of people sent us pictures today. That's interesting. You're seeing, well, who's on what poster type of thing, like the one I saw today, like Sting, Christian, Saraya, I think Jericho was on there. There's a bit of a weird cast of characters, Darby, Luchasaurus as well. So it's like one of them, a good mix of like, your so-called casual fan might go past on the tube and go, hang on, is that Sting? Oh, is that Chris Jericho? And then maybe, follow up. So they're doing all the promotional stuff to kind of, get things going and get people excited. But that's the biggest bit of feedback we've kind of had from the YouTube video we did on Friday, where we, did our Dynamite review. And really, we reviewed Dynamite in about 30 seconds because there was nothing to talk about. What was to talk about was the lack of anything All In.
Yeah.
And there's a palpable feeling, I think, from the majority of the responses we got. And again, we're talking hardcore fan circles, so you gotta take that into account. But there's just a general feeling of wanting to be excited about All In and kind of wanting just a bit more information to be excited about All In. Because I think there's a real fear starting, and it's all well and good for the Americans to pat us on the head and go, it'll be fine. Tony Khan always pulls it out of his arse. You can even make the argument, I hear Voices of Wrestling make it, their audio on this was very good, but they were talking about how this is just there's probably a spreadsheet Mookie Garner has somewhere that he keeps that explains why, in marketing terms, why you sell a lot of tickets at the start when you first announce something, and then you big push at the very end. And that's work for them can't be underestimated. We didn't really say it when we saw it on Friday, but it's got to be said that does generally work for them. The pay-per-views do amazing numbers. They mostly do good from attendance. There's a clear business strategy at play as to why it feels like this is going to all be left there very last minute. But I think what gets missed by that is just, it's pro wrestling. So, of course, you can use your week-to-week TV to, as well as sell a load of tickets, that last lot of tickets in the last week, generate the buzz and excitement that's going to help you and rise all ships and get things going, from a TV point of view, from a ticket sales point of view, but just from a general excitement level. And that's the thing that I think is missing. That's the most bit of feedback that I'm seeing from the people who've bought tickets. Like, people in our YouTube comments are like, I paid, 300 quid for me hotel and ticket, and transport was another 100 on top of it, expecting a gigantic, biggest wrestling show of all time. Loads of stories like that. And people are starting to get worried. I've heard this multiple times now. Be like, I'm a bit worried that this is going to turn into being like one of those UK only. It's going to be like a Mayhem in Manchester or a Capital Carnage or a one night only, which is remembered well, but isn't the most important of cards on a worldwide basis. And people are just getting a little bit nervous because WWE have done that to us before. WWE have done that.
Yeah.
Have had, you know, big shows that they've advertised. We'll go all the way back to Royal, you know, the Battle Royal at the Royal Albert Hall, that one, you know, like that level type of event where it's like, oh, pat them on the head. This is good for the Brits, but this is a $50 pay-per-view. The $60 pay-per-view that's coming the week after All Out in Chicago is actually the important one. I think we're all just looking for that reassurance that that's not going to be the case. And even with Collision, as much as I'm going to rave about Collision in a minute, because I fucking love that show, I still came out of it going, fuck, we still know nothing, you know?
Yeah. We still know absolutely nothing about it. Like, as something to reiterate from what we said before, this is the biggest show that they're ever going to do. They're not going to do this. They're not going to be doing 2 nights of this as well. And like, they're not. This is the biggest show they're ever going to do, because this is the thing that sets the impression in people's mind that wrestling is not just WWE, and there is another company that can do it on this whole other level, like this whole other level of spectacle, and therefore the card should match it. It is like, this is infinitely more important than All Out. Like, I find any notions of holding stuff back for that laughable. Stuff that comes out of this, fine. Stuff that's held off, like in terms of like undercard stuff to go on to All Out, yeah, fine, whatever. But this should really be the focus. And the person who said the most about this is CM Punk. You know,
He's done it because he's maybe not watched us, but he's watched YouTube videos like us, moaning about the lack of announcements and moaning. I mean, there is no wrestler more tuned in to the discourse than CM Punk. Like, he's seen the moaning and the fact that the Dynamite went by with barely a mention of Wembley, and then he was like, "Well, I'll babyface myself by mentioning it in my promo." But then still, it was an entire show that went by with very little mention of Wembley. You know. I've seen, Carl says here, so just say fucking and do a mystery show. I've heard that argument from Bully Ray. I'm not having that one. This needs to be the A show and All Out needs to be the B show, and hopefully that will still be the case. But like, I think we need some reassurance. I think we really, because another point someone made to us, because again, we had our initial rants, but like, to follow up, like I had Phil Jones in me replies, and he was saying like, and I hadn't even thought about this like until he said it. If you're going to leave all your build to the last minute, let's say Moxley Kingston's a match and we've got to make for Kingston to get back from the G1. Let's say Ospreay is doing something important, whether it's the Jericho match, whether it's the Kenny match, I would much prefer, but it doesn't feel like that's coming. If they do all that on the last Dynamite or this last Collision that week where they're taping them both on the Wednesday, Dynamite will barely air in the UK before Wembley on the Sunday, and Collision won't. Collision won't be on telly until after the pay-per-view has already happened. So your biggest shot window for selling this pay-per-view and for, all the talk about, selling those tickets last minute is kind of gone. So you can't do that practically. Like, it has to be now, and it feels like it's not going to be.
And that double taping in Georgia feels like that's a show where they'll be wrapping loads of stuff in it, which the dynamic, because you'll have all the main players in place, won't you? We won't get the I'd love to think that somehow they'll end with some sort of Kenny Omega CM Punk showdown in the middle of the ring or something like that, because that would be kind of incredible. But I just don't think that's going to be happening. I've got other strong thoughts on that. But it just adds, it's just an overwhelming, like, I'm just more baffled. I'm like, everyone in this company should be buzzing about this show. Everyone. The wrestlers should be busting a gut to be on there in the most prominent positions possible. Tony Khan should be going, this is the thing that I go to advertisers and potential media partners and I show them this show. This is the show that really makes us. Not just an arena in the US, Wembley fucking Stadium, which is famous. It's really fucking famous and very hard to sell out. Not everyone does that in there as well. Here we go. Is this Andrade on there? What has he said?
Yes. So Andrade's gone on Twitter tonight to book. He's done a CM Punk. He's calling his own shot here. I want the next one. I would like to see it all in. Presumably talking to Tommy Bell and Malachi Black for Mexico versus the Netherlands. So there we go. There's Andrade just doing his own thing.
Why not?
Love it.
Why not? No one else is.
Good match.
No, like, I mean, again, if you were going to fantasy book this, it's like, this is this should have, as we said before, big matchups and stuff like what is going to be the stuff that sells. I happen to think that they are going to end up doing Punk versus MJF. I think we had like the hint being there for it, and not having the heel turn on Collision and stuff like that made me think that's the direction they're going to drag that out, and it'll be
that's the one bit
face
that made me
MJF versus heel Punk. And I was like, ending the show absolutely makes a lot of sense. Your biggest star against your biggest up and coming star. Like that makes complete sense. What you should have with the other stuff on there, like, and that feels to me like a proper main event, like a world title main event. Like, and you can play on it, but also at the same time, you should have Ospreay Omega to try and put on, like, you know, finish the trilogy of what is seen as like one of the best, you know, sets of trilogies of possibly of all time. Certainly within, like, you know, kind of calendar year. What a place to end. I'm sure Will Ospreay would want that kind of prominence. It makes sense. It's something that they've promoted on pay-per-view. We spoke about Sting retirement matches. If you're not going to do it here, then where are you going to do it? Chicago? Why? Because you like Chicago. Great. You're not going to it's not going to mean anything in the scheme of things. It's just like it's the spectacle and it's the impression. But it just seems to be people should be busting a gut in this to say, I want on this show and I want on in a big prominent match. And the stuff we're hearing is almost like there's a kind of like wariness to it. And like people don't really know. And that was meant to be Vince shit. Vince was meant to be the one who didn't have a fucking clue. And then you look at the bill to SummerSlam and they're doing, you know, they're going to do near 50,000 on the day. They're at Ford Field, one of their, which they're doing now on the reg, and they're selling more tickets because they're getting their shit into fucking, you know, they're getting their shit into gear over there, which means you have to, well, that Vince advantage, we thought it may come back into play, but it really isn't with them. And they're losing this impression.
Yeah. Seems obvious because you don't want to tell them to learn a lesson from WWE because it's fucking WWE. But like this, you know, the last thing I'll say on that point of view is this should be AEW's WrestleMania. You know, we've said it a million times. Right now, it's feeling like it's going to be AEW's one night only or Capital. I don't know. I can't decide which. Maybe Rebellion, the UK pay per view. Maybe it's more like that. It's feeling like it might be one of those lines. But it should be your WrestleMania. You know, it should be the biggest show of the year. And again, not even just talking about it from a ticket sales point of view, I think is important. You want to, and they probably will, and they should deserve a lot of credit for this, have the biggest wrestling attendance that has ever happened outside of people being forced by gunpoint to go to a show. Like, that is most likely going to be the case. So, like, all of these things are true. This is potentially the biggest show ever. And I just think, like I say, that rising tide can pull up, can rise all chips, because you look at, like, you know, Dynamite last week, which we're not going to waste any time talking about a second time, but like that felt like such a nothing show. The one thing, and they don't always get it right, recent years especially, but like you could always rely on WWE, but like the shit all year round. And then the 4 weeks leading into WrestleMania, there was a point where Raw was appointment television. I know that sounds like it was a long time ago, but there was, because important shit was happening, and those, you know, there was a boost in the ratings because there was important shit happening leading up to Mania. And that's why last week's Dynamite is so unforgivable, because we should be in that period now for AEW where every show is important, because fucking hell, Wembley's coming. I said it on the weekend show, should be the Pucci effect. Everyone should be mentioning Wembley at every given moment. It should be plastered everywhere. And we're just not getting that. The only person that's given us any promotion for it, JP, is our mate Double J. You know, he's over in the UK. He's shooting his own angles like Andrade. He's trying to get things going. You know, like that's it. Though he's a one-man promotional unit at the minute.
And he should absolutely be on the getting an entrance at Wembley during the Battle Royal that they inevitably do. Where hopefully all those people you want to give a vote, that's where you throw them. Yeah, it's where you put them in there. But yeah, he twatted Grado, didn't he, with the guitar was it on Hawksby and Jacobs? Was it?
Yeah. Apparently, see, Grado was shooting a shot. Grado's it was on talk.
Spares me from talking shit about Arsenal, as they normally fucking do.
I felt the only bad bit was I laughed then, but the guys who were hosting it did end up laughing rather than selling the severity of Grado getting hit over the head with a guitar, but genuinely, there's Jeff fucking his own angle there. Like, because Grado literally was like, "Oh, I'd love to do Wembley." You know, I'm sure every wrestler would. No wrestler's gonna say no, are they? But I don't know. Like, the ironic part of me would enjoy that at Wembley, but like, it could be. I could see that being something progress book on the weekend, or like it ends up being like because Jeff's got the connections and whatever, or it ends up being like for the TNA tour covered up. But maybe laugh that even Jeff, he's on radio, he's doing all the promotion for the show, and he's building his own match with Grado now rather than anything we can actually tell you about the card. It's just brilliant.
And that's it. It's like it's like selling a pay-per-view, which sometimes it's like, well, I don't want to be sold something. It's like, I want to feel excited about this. There's a lot that we've all kind of invested into this, and you're hoping it boosts wrestling popularity in this country, where it's actually thought of as like, this is a big deal, and that it's the kind of thing that ITV would take seriously, and then that would lead to benefiting all manner of wrestling around the UK and other things like that, and into Europe. But that doesn't appear, I don't know, either it's not the priority, because like it's still feeling like this story is brilliant in Tony Khan's head, and it's that thing that everyone says. It's just like, and he'll explain it, and I'm sure the subtlety that we had on Collision, I don't doubt that's going to play into it. But sometimes you need shit to actually happen, rather than like kind of what is really, I said plot progression, it's character development. Well, we're kind of at the point we need the plot to move on. We need actual events to start taking place that leads to your biggest show of all time. It should be the thing that focuses the mind. And the rumors of the matches, and we spoke about them before, like, I mean, the more I think of them, the more awful I think they are. Like, it'll be a pop for an entrance, but the match will, I don't see stuff that lives long in the memory. The idea that the EVPs of the company are wanting to do a match with the Dark Order, I think speaks volumes.
Oh, that's not happening. No way. No way. No. I know they're doing a stupid six.
They should be coming out challenging FTR.
Yeah, like, that's got to be the match.
Otherwise, why are they there?
This has been the thing. It's like, I asked, do you feel better after Collision this weekend? I do in some ways, because I think up until Collision, it wasn't even like so much about we want matches announced on paper. We would like that, but like you also want to have things that are hinted, like you're saying there, that you're excited about. Think that you're like, okay, this is the direction it feels like they're going, so I'm excited. I think FTR and Bucks is one of them. I just don't think it's a coincidence that FTR mentioned the Bucks in the promo a couple of weeks ago. I think you can read a couple of things into what Punk was saying in his promo about, being the grown-up in the room and, people having to do things they don't want to do. I was wondering if that was about the Bucks. I suppose it could be about MJF himself. But I feel a little bit more comfortable, like fancy booking, like coming out of Collision. Like if we talk that, like like the main things coming out of Collision were the Punk and Ricky Starks promo. So that was another one. The fact that their match is now happening on next week's Collision, and God help them because it's head to head with SummerSlam. But I was like, okay, cool. That takes one out the mix, because there was a lot of talk, a lot of fancy book cards that had Punk versus Ricky Starks. Maybe in Chicago. Not on your fucking stadium show. And then Punk, being Punk, like we said, went out there. He's read all the dirt sheets. He's watched all the YouTube videos. He's listened to all the audio. He knows everyone's whining about Wembley. So it felt like he actually hit fast forward on this MJF program. Because like I found it very interesting that like he's had this little red bag that he's carrying around. And then it got kind of forgotten about, didn't it? Like it's not like the entire run of Collision he's been saying he's the real world's champion. It was almost like, fuck, we've got to start doing stuff. So I'll say I'm the real world's champion today. But then you had the unfortunate kind of problem that he did it on the night that MJF was in the building. And MJF didn't seem to care. MJF was still doing his buddy stuff with Adam Cole. So it feels like something got a little bit lost in translation there. But it feels like, you say we got the bones of something going there. And I have to believe with all my heart, and I just have to believe it at this point. Otherwise, I'll cry. Punk, MJF is your big Wembley match. And if that is the case, I feel like we set things in motion well enough on Collision with that Punk promo and all of the Ricky Stark stuff.
Yeah, we did. I was very relieved when I saw that the Starks match was happening, and then the turn didn't happen. I was like, okay, that's fine, because it writes MJF out of the tag division whilst also at the same time. And, it's not for me, but people enjoy Adam Cole and MJF, and it can't be denied. Like, you can't. So, in a sense,
I'll turn the corner right now. I think I'm into it. Sorry.
I don't like the skits. However, if this is, then MJF is going to have to go in there with like CM Punk and stuff. I think there's like, that's a much more like kind of proper main event, with big kind of entrances and other stuff like that.
Two main eventers wrestling each other. That's all we want.
Two main eventers. Yeah.
I don't want a card full of main eventers wrestling people who are just a bit below them on the card. You know what I mean? Like that's a nice
one or two of those.
Yeah. Yeah, to support the big, the big grown-up matches up on top happening. And that's what I was worried about with if MJF goes the Adam Cole direction and Punk goes the Starks direction, which still could happen. I just don't think you're losing then one big match that has a main eventer versus a main eventer. And when we tried to fantasy book it on our Patreon show yesterday, when you do that, you realize there's not that many interesting big singles matches once you take Punk Kenny off the table that you can actually do with the tippy top guys, and Punk MJF is one of them. But I was going to ask, what did you make of the promo segment as a whole? I thought Punk was on top form here with his troll and with his little biting lines, whether they were aimed at the Bucks, whether they were aimed at MJF, who knows? Very much enjoyed that. I thought Ricky Starks really rose to the occasion as well. I don't think there's the jury's been a bit out on Ricky Starks on this podcast. I don't think we've fully determined where we think he ends up slotting in the card. And we talked a lot recently, to be fair. If he doesn't end up being a tippy top guy, okay. But right now he's in a much healthier, much more interesting position than he's ever been at any point in AEW. I thought, for the most part, he held his own with Punk. A couple of logic gaps there. I don't know why he was so quick to agree to the special referee stip, but whatever. The performance was really good. And you know me, JP. I'm gonna, and you too probably. I'm gonna pop when Julio De Niro gets a reference from Ricky Starks there, and Punk counters with some prime classic ROH law by announcing Ricky Steamboat as the referee for the match no one's gonna watch next Saturday. I loved it. It was playing, as Jamesy said, very hard to me and people like me, but I thought this was a fantastic promo near the top of the show on Collision.
Aren't they on Greensboro next week as well? So they're in North Carolina. So and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is one of the very few kind of legends who's come in who is in like that WWE run is something that sits in my mind. Sorry. And I've always thought he really looks after himself here and he gets it. And I think it's like, it's never something like I kind of like his appearances. He's someone who, as the years gone on, I'm much more fond about. In terms of Ricky Starks, we've seen him do this before with MJF. When it came to the promo battles, and he was like, he could like think on his feet, and he's proven it again here with Punk. And like, we'll always say a thing about can he have really good dramatic matches on like that kind of main event level. For me, that's really where the jury is out. And there's, dare I say it, like there are things that are too reminiscent of other people at times about him. It's hard not to think that there is, like, to the casual person, I'll think of him as like a Rock knockoff or someone like along those, like, just with little twists here and there. And I do think he's more than that. And that you can get it. It's how far I think the work comes into it. And this is someone who not that long ago had a badly broken neck. So like there are things that you do need to kind of think about with him. But in terms of, I was just relieved, like I said, this match was going to be on next week and not at All In.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, they got a real uphill battle when it comes to going up against SummerSlam. I really thought they were going to punt that Collision, but again, we're in Wembley mode. You can't pump many shows right now, so it's gonna have to be all hands on deck, and I love it. And yeah, that's just saying in the chat there whether Ewan saying whether Big Tone will pay for the Alan Parsons project for Steamboat's thing. You'll have to believe he will.
Is he going to pay for Like a Prayer for Grado when he comes out in the Battle Royal? Because if he does,
I hope so. Do us a favor, Tom. So no, I thought that was really strong. Very much enjoyed that. I thought, lots of credit to Starks for that. And yeah, Punk definitely paying a lot of attention to people like us. But like I say, the other half of that story, the other main story on Collision, FTR, Adam Cole, and MJF. I thought it was a cracking main event overall. we're not going to go into the weeds on all the other stuff on the show, but overall, it was I probably thought it was the best Collision so far. Maybe AEW's best TV of the year. I'm not sure, but I think this main event was a big part of it as well. I thought this was FTR almost dragging the Adam. It was like two worlds colliding, really, and I like that about it. We've built this Adam Cole MJF thing in a very, for lack of a better term, sports entertaining, almost WWE style buddy comedy thing that's been going on Dynamite, and then to get their tag title shot, they had to come to Collision to get it, which is FTR's world, and then FTR made them have what basically was pretty much a standard tag team match with a fun couple of hokey spots in there, but there was never going to be a dance off, and I felt like both sides kind of got the best out of each other as a result. It was a really compelling match. It was a match where, unlike a lot of things in wrestling or in AEW, to be honest, most of the time, it was in doubt who was going to win. Like, I genuinely thought it could go either way. I thought Cole and MJF could win the tag belts, and then I don't know what you were going to do with that from a booking point of view next, but it was certainly within the realm of possibility. MJF could have turned on Cole. Cole could have turned on MJF. Anything could have happened, and it made it so much more exciting to watch live. I thought he did it really well. Finish was pretty well done with MJF doing the whole, saving Adam Cole from the finisher. Not sure how I feel to your point about the world champion jobbing to the tag team champions. It's a very reverse Vince that had never happened in the WWE world. But I thought it was all really well done, and I thought the post match definitely gave some food for thought as to what's coming next.
Which I liked, because fundamentally, what happened in the post match? I mean, was going to hit him with the title, and he threw it down. And I think for that, I appreciated that nothing kind of happened. There was a lot of tease and other stuff like that, but it's been an act that, like I said earlier on, that people are into, and I completely get why. And this is a match. I thought this was like cracking TV tag team match. It like made me think of like a kind of, dare I say, going back to like kind of IWC WCW for like kind of like
Dax will love that. He's like funky. He's watched all the YouTube videos as well. Hi, Dax. Nice to see you, mate. Yeah, I'm Matt Boone.
Exactly, Southern Boys and stuff like this is the Midnight Express. But it did have that, but it was the kind of stuff that was like you should be putting on for TV. I think this is like the kind of stuff that actually works kind of perfectly. I mean, it was interesting. It was noted in the chat earlier on that it was said with FTR, like what you end up doing with them now at this point feels like they've mentioned the Acclaimed, the Bucks, and Aussie Open in a promo. I could now that if that's been brought up, it's like, at that stage, that feels like the kind of four-way, because you want the Acclaimed on the show, and Aussie Open are the team that you're probably like really building. I'm not mad on four-ways, but okay.
I'd only do it if you can get FTR and the Bucks to be willing to do the same match. Everyone just needs to go up and let's do the match. Like, I don't think that's bigger than a lot of the singles matches they could put together, I think. Like, or it should be if the Bucks were, didn't feel like a mid-card tag act at this point, if they were actually, drag kicking and screaming into doing serious wrestling programs. But that's a side point. We'll get into that.
That's a match that should be an all out.
Yeah.
And then you have the TV add in Aussie Open and the Acclaimed or something like that. But then,
that could be the follow-up. Yeah, that could make, maybe they're waiting. There should be a lot of that. Even if Ricky Starks, like I said on the weekend show, if Ricky Starks is waiting in the wings for the winner of Punk MJF, cool, do it on All Out. Like, and you can lean into the Ricky the heel, is Punk the babyface type of stuff. Like, that would make sense. But I suppose the more interesting question is Adam Cole and MJF. Like, I honestly think I don't think I want to see it, is the problem. But from a story point of view, it would make so much more sense now for Cole to turn on MJF, because MJF's teasing turning on Cole at the end of the show and doesn't. And Cole is being such a sappy, kind of willing to forgive him and hug him and be so happy that MJF didn't turn on him, that for his credibility, I think it almost has to be a plan. Like, maybe he's like lying in wait, waiting for MJF to turn on him, and then he's going to strike. I think that would make so much sense from a story point of view. The problem is you then end up with babyface MJF and heel Adam Cole, which I actually don't think is best for either of them. I think right now in the world, I'll give Adam Cole as a heel another go in AEW at some point, but I think I'll probably keep him face. And MJF, I mean, that's just a guy that should be a career heel, really, shouldn't he? Although, I suppose he's shown shines of it. The promo against Dax on Dynamite was very Rock-esque when it came to ripping him apart and stuff. Do you think they could go that direction? Do you think they could pull it off? Let's say that was a Wembley or all-out match, but it was the other way around, and Cole was the heel and MJF was the face. Would that make you any more interested in what they've been doing so far?
You see, the thing I found interesting is not necessarily the skits. As I've said, they're not really for me, but it's more how the crowds have instantly kind of taken to them. The theme music, everything else. Obviously, the reports on the T-shirt, but I'm skeptical about AEW's merch game. I won't lie. So I think with this, like, the best direction is you kind of stick with it for a while. You go past All Out. You start to think about Full Gear. You start to think about even Revolution. You go that far with it, because if this is something that's working, and if you do the thing of going to MJF, CM Punk, and have Punk win the title at Wembley, then at that point you can have him and Adam Cole, and there's a whole dynamic you can do with MJF being like really depressed and Adam Cole trying. There's skits that people will enjoy, people who aren't me, but they will enjoy it, and it will work, and it will carry on all the things, and it will obviously then, I think you can. There's mileage in this. But I think the idea of, if they start to think, we've got All In and we've got All Out and we've got Arthur Ashe, like, there are other people that they can kind of work with. This isn't like, you have to be really settled on this. And I think they have to go with where the crowd is wanting to go with this, where, like, have them as, like, they can wrestle fucking singles matches. It doesn't mean they're a permanent tag team. It's like, that's what I would be doing with it.
I like what the lads are saying in the chat. Like Conor saying there, Punk and MJF at Wembley, Cole at ringside, you get your big 10. And, like, imagining that atmosphere, people loving the MJF Cole thing. I think that works as well, because Punk's such a tweener right now. I couldn't tell you, like, how Wembley will react to him. Like, I'm not sure. I think it will be split. And MJF will probably be split as well. So maybe you don't want MJF full heel right now. Maybe this tweener role, you keep him in to do Punk MJF at the pay-per-view. And then whichever way you go, the turn happens at the end. Probably more effective than if Cole does turn, even if I've got concerns about the follow-up. Maybe that's what happens. But isn't it interesting? I mean, that's an interesting dive. There's much as we've been down on it, JP. That's like, there's 3 different ways that could go, and we don't know. Yeah. And I like that. That's good. Like, that doesn't happen often in AEW,
And none of it involves All In headlined by MJF Adam Cole. Which I fundamentally, like, I'll just to say it again with CM Punk and this, he will definitely be in the main event, because he'll be thinking, I want to be headlining the biggest show in wrestling history. Like, that's his mindset at this point in time. Yeah. Sorry, just to throw that one.
It's always wired, isn't he? Mentioned in the chat there for while we're talking MJF, Richard Halliday, who was backstage at Collision, JP. Were you sad when he didn't come out and didn't get the dynasty back together? Where's your boy Hammer? Like, it could have been a whole reunion of the whole JP gang. No.
I was thinking about this, getting them all back in. First of all, it's brilliant to see him back, because he had cancer and he's in full remission now. So, like, absolutely fair play. Brilliant story.
I just want to say, like, I am the AEW have 92 many wrestlers to sign Richard Halliday guy, but with the real life story and everything he's been to, I would never begrudge that. If he got signed for that, even just for that reason, it was like, well done for kind of coming back and fighting through all that and getting your wrestling career going again. I wouldn't be mad at it. I wouldn't.
He's not, as a worker, he's not the greatest, but what he is...
MJF is how I described him. That's what I think he is.
He had presence. He was able to, like, kind of see him doing his stuff in Mexico as well. But yeah, that would definitely be a nice story, I'd have to say. But yeah, I mean, it's a funny one. You mentioned about, like, kind of going back into the broader conversation about Collision. Again, it was an excellent show. It just didn't move the plot on in a way. It was like watching something that's, like, turning into a really good TV series, and you think you're near the series finale, and it'd be like watching kind of, I don't want to compare it to Game of Thrones, but that feeling you've gone, there's more that could have happened here this week. There was a lot more. We're kind of keeping our power. Some good scenes. Samoa Joe insulting Gravity was some of my favorite TV.
Has anyone ever done less with more TV time than Gravity? Like, even, what was he on? Dynamite, Rampage, ROH, Collision. He's been on everything this week. And every time I see him, I want to see less.
Joe looked like he took the piss.
He's crap, he's just crap. Yeah. Like, no, not even crap. He's young, he's only a kid, and he shouldn't be on TV.
And he's not been wrestling long as well. I mean, I think it's the thing with, like, I think he was playing football more or less.
Joe,
so, like,
you said though, Joe taking the piss out of doing the walk away on the dive and doing the slow motion walk made it worth it. But I will stand by the fact that the poor lad shouldn't have been on telly in that position in the first place. Oh, I love Collision this week. You know, like everything on the show I thought was good. Thought like I love that Joe squash. Thought Darby and Minoru Suzuki. Minoru Suzuki came out, and to be honest, at this point, I don't get excited when he comes out because I've seen him in the US. I've been spoiled probably just from watching him on the Indies and stuff. I've seen him and in the UK, seen him 90 times do the same act. But I thought Darby pulled something interesting out of him by, I think it was maybe the way he jump started the match.
Yep.
You know, Darby does that sometimes, doesn't he? Go straight to the dive and then it becomes a hot 10-minute brawl rather than a meandering match it might have been otherwise. I thought that was fantastic. I thought Mercedes Martinez and Kiera Hogan was a really good outing for Mercedes. Doing the thing with Statlander after the match was like, yeah, it's pretty basic, boring booking, but I felt like she made it work and she got over in the process. I thought that was really good. I thought the Bullet Club Gold guys with Jay White not even in the picture, just using the cardboard cutout.
That was funny.
Was fucking hilarious. Juice coming out doing the entrance with Austin and Colton Gunn. Yeah. I was laughing so hard at that. Like the AEW Twitter account said he'd made it cooler. He definitely didn't. But like they've got really good chemistry. Even the promo they cut afterwards where they were talking. I don't know if it was on the Twitter or if it was on the show itself where they were talking for Jay and one of the Guns was doing an impression of Jay White. That was fucking brilliant. I love that act and I love the fact that Collision. I know it's a cardboard cutout, so it's a terrible example, but doesn't let you forget about Jay White. He doesn't disappear off the telly like Hangman Page does on Dynamite. He's still around. He's still part of this story, and he'll be presumably back next week. I thought that was great, and I thought Andrade and Buddy Matthews, I've got low expectations for a ladder match, and I thought they killed it as well, JP.
Yeah, I mean, everything you mentioned, it kind of just over-delivered. Because I have to say, I mean, with Mercedes Martinez and like the Bullet Club Gold wins, it's like ultimately they don't move things towards All In. However, within the context of kind of TV and the TV program, it makes sense. And obviously, you want Statlander on this show to kind of be anchoring the division as much as anything else on there. And I completely agree with the ladder match. It was a lot more fun than I expected. These two have got obviously really good chemistry as well. And it feels like they're doing something with Andrade.
Yeah,
that's how it feels. It feels like they're actually doing stuff with him. Are we going to see it really before these shows in the next month? Probably not. Are we really going to start to see it towards the end of the year? If they carry on in this trajectory, yeah, he'll be mixing with kind of main eventers.
And that's the benefit of Collision. Like I say, I think this week's show, you get all the positives of Collision, where you get the focus on individual guys. You know, you get the focus on a Ricky Starks. Maybe not Jay White this week if the cardboard cutout doesn't count, but that was still happening. You had I suppose the Punk promo was more like your first half main event, wasn't it? You got that part. You know, wasn't that dead part of the show like there was last week, and then you had your big main event. Nailed it. You know, last week had a bit of a gaping hole in the middle, but this is the format you want for Collision. There's a couple of moments where I was feeling a bit Jeremy and Peep Show, where like after the opening ladder match, they went literally straight to the back for that Miro interview, and I was like, come on. This doesn't feel very Collision-y. Like this feels a bit Dynamite-y. I'm not happy with this. Slow it down a bit, lads. I don't want to be bored like I was for stretches last week, but you know, pull it back. And to be fair, it wasn't like that. There was a lot going on, but not too much going on, which can happen with Dynamite. Yeah, I thought it was a cracking show. Speaking of Miro, yeah, they just need to get going with him, don't they? Like,
yeah,
give him a fucking program, like give him something to do. That isn't just beating people up randomly every now and then. Give him a big match for All In or All Out. I'd love that.
Have him come out in a tank again. That'd be the last time he was in like working probably in the stadium. That would be awesome if he did that.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, this is like, it's still, I don't know, do you still fall down on the side that obviously there's more they could have done with this show? However, as between the two shows, and you know, going by our Discord as well, it does feel like, I mean, of the two, Collision is by far and away the better show. And
it's made for us, isn't it?
Yeah, it is made for us,
aren't we?
But it's the idea that it isn't a big roster in there as well. So you kind of have to make do with the pieces. So people are like, everyone is kind of like growing. We've spoken about Andrade has been growing. Even Buddy Matthews has been in there. You know, we're seeing much, obviously Bullet Club Gold are probably like you'd imagine one of like the success stories.
Massively.
them there as well. And they've managed to kind of build people in there. Like FTR title defenses they happen on the reg. When there was a complaint, they don't defend it against anyone. It's like, well, actually, they are now. Now they're on a show where there is. It's just what we're waiting for is that spark for things to kick off, which is effectively the CM Punk big turning scorched earth heel turn. Like that would be the thing that would kind of like make this really appointment viewing and a bit
Definitely. But again, I'm willing to be patient with Collision. I want to see where we go in all these directions. And thought it was really good stuff. Anything else on AEW, JP? Like I say, slightly more. I'm less enraged than I was on Friday when it comes to Wembley. But I would like to see this week's Dynamite get us going now. As much as I might ironically love Jeff, like the card, at least the Elite are in town, JP. At least they got a little jive from Punk, didn't they, on Collision? At least they're here. However, they're in a 6-man tag on this Dynamite 200 coming up this week against was it Jeff J and Satnam? I mean, it's some wishing on a monkey's paw stuff, that is it. I mean, Kenny Jeff, could that be your all? No, it's probably not going to be your all in match, is it? But let's hope that's the setup for something else. I think that would be the ideal.
It's a dereliction of duty if it isn't at this point, because the question would be, what are you building to? And the thing that you're building to in your head, is it more important than this show? And I'm pretty sure that in 100% of the occasions, no. It's like, yeah. So like, I want to. It's arses in the gear time and stuff like that. I'm seeing people pumped about a Wembley show.
Yeah, I see the Elite together, and like I just see a trios match announcement, and it just makes me cringe. It just makes me worry. It just makes me think, oh no, is JP going to be right? They're going to end up working the Dark Lord. Let's just separate them. Where's Hangman Page? He better be on fucking Dynamite this week. Like it's Dynamite 200, and we're celebrating the lifespan of AEW. Then Hangman Page should be there. All of your big stars should be there. Like that's the minimum you would kind of expect from this like Dynamite 200. Let's hope that the little whisperings we've heard that this is going to be where things get going. So Jericho's teaming with Takeshita against Sammy and Daniel Garcia. That's one of the things on the show. Tony Storm versus Shida is on the show. There's that 6-man. Moxley, Penta, and Trent Beretta doesn't deserve any of my time, but that's apparently happening as well. Let's just hope all those main characters being across those matches are interacting with other main characters, and we get going. Like let's hope they're just placeholders for much more significant stuff coming out of Dynamite this week.
Yeah, and it's Dynamite 200. We sometimes it feels like, are we being just overly critical? But effectively, the thing about it is that we've seen pretty much all of these 200 episodes, give or take. We've seen each and every one of them. We've seen this company kind of grow in a way, and it's a massive success story. You could be talking about building a potential billion-dollar franchise from the fucking ground in the space of 200 episodes of Dynamite.
And as Garrett said, Nitro did. What did Nitro do? Like 280 or something like that.
280.
We're not far off.
And then at that point, this is the most serious competition. Like, it's not the most. Like WWE was a much more competition to WWE. But you're talking about since then, like a company really coming along and managing to maintain its place as well. That's why we want this show to work, because ultimately we've seen WWE have raised their game as a result of like this stuff, and it's been stuff they've been working on for a while, but they have raised their game. This is the time for AEW to do likewise, and it means putting your best foot forward. And if some people don't like it, tell them to fuck off.
Definitely. Well, on that note, moving on to other things going on. The Cody Rhodes documentary was released today, JP. As a sneak preview, has been making it some salacious quotes coming out of it. And you managed to get it on the JP drive, didn't you? A couple of hours before we managed to hit record tonight. So we just missed it, unfortunately. So I reckon the wrestling world is going to be watching. I assume it's a Peacock exclusive documentary, isn't it? So I assume it'll go on the network at some point. But right now it was Hooky Means was the only way we were getting hold of it, mate. But we've managed to see a few clips from it. We know what's kind of the big stuff that people are going to be talking about. He talked a bit about leaving AEW and going for the biggest and first dream he ever had. He did say also, I think there's the quote there as well from, thought that was extremely interesting. I'm saying that, and then on top of that, obviously we've had this Triple H quote that's in there where Triple H talks about it's taking a gamble, and saying that Triple H himself didn't grow up wanting to be the dreaming to be the champion or face of a secondary promotion, which is what Piss and Company 2023 from old Trips there. I mean, I would argue, I feel like he grew up watching the NWA in the 80s, therefore that probably was the number 2 in the 80s. But whatever, Trips, we'll take it. And to that point, I think Cody grew up wanting to be WCW champion, not WWE champion. But anywho, that was said, and there was a quote from Brandy Rhodes as well.
Title back in the day, and then they did some sort of screw job. No, it was a count out finish. So he lifted the title up, but he didn't hold it. But that again felt like kind of shoehorned in, because we know with Sting, his favorite wrestler, his dad was synonymous with WCW and NWA. That's kind of what you end up thinking about. It's not the polka dots for a lot of people. It is in WWE lore. They fucking love it. But that was all meant as a rivet at Dusty at the time. So in terms of what he says about AEW, it's not very much. When he says personal issue, as Ewan says here in the chat, I assumed, all right, he's had a falling out with Tony Khan. What kind of things could it be personal? Was he saying we're not having Brandy Rhodes on TV? Like, I imagine if it was something like, that's where my mind kind of instantly went, or something along those lines. What would be something that would make him fundamentally split? He says it isn't the creative differences and stuff like that. And Triple H getting the dig in, I was more shocked that they kind of even really talked about it, because there was a time where they just avoided this stuff. They didn't mention other companies, but they can't avoid it. They talk more about All In, and they've got footage from his like indie run, like, and stuff like that. So there's a tiny bit from WXW.
So Chris said there's BTE footage in there, is there? The stuff from Being the Elite in there? Wow.
Yeah, there's Being the Elite. Being the Elite is in there as well. They've got some stuff on there that they've managed to get from YouTube. So they have the Bucks in there. There's nothing else about like the rest of the Elite or anything else. They're not like Omega or anyone like that. It's just not mentioned at all. What is this documentary looking to do? It's just a couple of things. It's like, it's a canny enough kind of set of quotes to get people like us talking, and to get kind of general mood music for people wanting, to get people to watch the documentary. So it serves that purpose. It doesn't say anything necessarily that kind of like necessarily reinvents the wheel. I'll watch the documentary. It looks interesting, and like I say, it's very well made. But like, if we're wanting kind of like bigger answers into this, I think we're going to get them soon enough. What was the kind of like issue? And again, you have to assume it's with Tony Khan himself. This isn't about Tony Khan wanting to turn him heel or anything.
Well, there's a reason there's non-disclosures. That's the reason, because he starts the clip I've seen.
I can't talk about it.
He starts by saying, I can't talk about it, and that's been obvious from the start. Like, why would they sign those agreements unless there was something? There was obviously a blow up of some kind. We can only really guess, can't we, what it was? Ewan says here in the chat, Ewan Cameron saying, there's a time when TK took creative control back from the books. Could have done the same with Cody. He should have, because that was always the thing. How much do I love Cody Rhodes, JP?
It was a mess.
It hit my heart to have to spend months having a go at Cody's booking in AEW. And I think we were consistent with it, where I think other podcasts weren't, in that we were like, if Cody's coming up with these ideas, tell him no. It's the same argument I think we've been consistent with the Bucks and Kenny. If their idea is to, it's going to be the year 2025 and they're going to be doing, a 6-man feud with fucking Dark Order still, and fucking Brandon Nakazawa's going to be on a pole or something like that, and they're going to be fighting over him. Like, if you let them
There's
do
the title, Brandon Nakazawa.
Somebody add that to the chat for later. There's no post show, so we need these notes. But you know what I mean? Like, if you leave it to the Bucks, they'll do that. And Tony Khan needs to be grown up and say no. And he did at a point with them. And as I would argue, he probably needs to do more of that. I think with Cody, there was absolutely an argument for that. He was booking himself into the ground, booking himself against QT Marshall, booking himself badly against Anthony Ogogo,
Yeah.
put himself in just stuff that was lesser than where he should have been in the card, right down to the whole world title thing. I think the book lies with Tony Khan, so he should be spared of criticism for the way Cody, ended in AEW and with things being left on the table. But Cody deserved as much of that criticism as well. So, Tony should have, either words. Andy says, yeah, Tony's an idiot. It's like not like he forgot to renew it. Maybe he was just happy to be rid of Cody. You forget. It's one of those things. Like it's like you think back to like I don't know 1993 WWF, and you're like fucking hell. Like Flair was at the same time as whoever from the new generation or 92. I suppose you'd have to go back to. There's those weird crossover areas. That's one. Cody and Punk were in the company at the same time for a couple of months, but Tony had his CM Punk toy to play with, and I think it's either you or Garrett who'd make that point a lot. That like, well, he had fake. I think actually I'm giving the wrong credit. I think it was Steph who said it a lot. Tony had Cody Rhodes to do like his faux CM Punk storylines with, but he had actual CM Punk then. So Cody being the voice of the voiceless and all of that stuff didn't need him anymore. So maybe that was part of it. He had a shiny new toy coming in that could give him, reason to just discard the old one in Cody. But something clearly happened there. Something was clearly a change. There was clearly an upset there, and all their talk over the last couple of years about how there was nothing to it. There was no beef, and it was fine. We just knew it was bollocks, and it just feel like this documentary's had a little bit more of it seep out now. And at some point, we're gonna get a tell-all. At some point, we're gonna find out whether it was the creative, or whether it was something personal involving Brandy or whatever. But things went right, and I we like a victory lap, JP. But I said that at the time it was bad for AEW to let Cody leave, and people really argued that. Like, that's fine, let him go. And I was like, well, no, I mean, this is one of the founding fathers of AEW, and like him leaving is probably going to upset the entire ecosystem of what AEW was. And I think absolutely it worked out best for Cody in the end, because he went to WWE and they, didn't let him book himself, and he was booked competently, shockingly, and was booked really well. But like, I said it then and I say it now. I think Tony Khan definitely deserved criticism for letting that happen and letting that slip and letting him go to WWE. You can make the argument at the end that it was for the best that he maybe left AEW, because if you're just looking at it from a booking point of view as to how booked into the ground he'd been, but we shouldn't have ever got to that point. With the last 6 months of Cody Rhodes' AEW career should have been him working with top level guys. We never got a Punk match. We never got a Hangman match. We never got a Kenny match. We didn't even get
never got a heel turn.
Yeah, a meta one according to him, but that was always fucking bollocks. No. Like Sting, he mentioned it in I think in interviews promoting this documentary. That was a match that he wanted and was planning on doing, but he left before it could happen. Like, doesn't make Tony Khan look very good, I don't think, as far as like having his house in order, and it feels a little bit like history could repeat with the Elite.
I think so, but I think a lot of times they've saved them from their bad instincts. Like, these guys hadn't run a wrestling company like in their defense, and they're kind of being thrown in. And I suggest that like perhaps the impression was that Cody was like, I'm going to basically be like my dad and be kind of backstage running things in a general way. You guys will book elements to it. And what we forget is the show was a mess. Yeah. It was a mess. And it ended with a Dark Order angle. It's a recurring theme tonight. And that was the thing. It felt like, no, something needs to change here. This show is a mess. I think there was like a week they didn't have it or something along those lines. Or like, it was just like they basically kind of almost taken like a timeout and do a kind of like reset. Their instincts were generally very, very bad. And because they were bad, the audience was kind of turning on him. And so a heel turn, they hadn't like lost, not like they didn't care. He still had the heat. They just wanted to see this. And so it's not like, and the documentary makes out it was like, it was going great guns. And then this arsehole billionaire fired me, which is like a familiar thing that they've said in the past as well about Ted Turner. It's the kind of usual shit that you would kind of expect. But with this, like him, like it was a blow, and him going to WWE has been a success. And the fact that they're willing to do this suggests that they are gonna like go all the way with him at some point. I just find it very interesting and slightly weird that they haven't gone after the other members of the Elite. particularly with like all their contracts being up and everything else. WWE haven't made that play. Like that one I find fascinating. But then Cody was always one of theirs, and it very much makes that clear. He went away. He's the prodigal son. He went away. He came along. He created their competition, and then he came back. Like that's
the story. 2 minutes done.
Yeah.
I'm not. No, I am genuinely looking forward to watching it. I presume it'll debut. Maybe it'll be. I don't. Is it on after Raw? They often do that with these documentaries. Maybe it's coming at some point to the network. I've heard the network's been shit in the bed for a lot of people. I was trying to use it today to watch the NXT pay-per-view we're going to be talking about in a bit, and it just kept buffering for me. And I know the kid, I think John Pollock was saying in Canada he couldn't even find the NXT show to watch on there, so it doesn't give me a lot of hope that I'm going to get it on there, but hopefully it at have point. But I mean, speaking of Cody and speaking of WWE, quickly before we have got obviously some G1 chatter to come as well. But before we get to the 2 matches, I think we might talk about from the NXT pay-per-view. There is a small matter of SummerSlam being this weekend, JP. I'm going to be missing the weekend show, so you and Matty over on the Patreon will give it the full preview. But it's a really solid card. You know, I'm looking forward to this on Saturday. Yeah, I think it could be a lot of fun. Like Logan Paul Ricochet is one I'm looking forward to on the card. Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler, less so. Cody Brock, the tiebreaker there. How they get around that and give Cody a win. Might be interesting. Speaking of Cody, Gunther Drew McIntyre for the Intercontinental title. That's a nailed on good match, I think. Asuka, Bianca Belair, and Charlotte Flair. I'm listening to Seth Rollins from Balor. I'll probably skip that one. 3.75 is my rating, folks. I'll tell you now. And Jey Uso, maybe 3.5. And Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns. Obviously, the main event in the tribal warfare, tribal fight to death, tribal thing, whatever it's called. But that's a really solid SummerSlam card. Like, I don't think you can argue WWE have had anything less than a stellar year as far as pay-per-views go. I think this is going to be another great one. It's almost going to be a shame because this is Detroit, so it's not quite the locale they've had for most of their stuff this year, but it's been wall-to-wall stadium shows or well-built, meaningful shows in interesting markets. When you talk about the Montreal show for Sami Zayn, or you go to WrestleMania itself, or the UK pay-per-view, they really nailed it this year. And this looks like, as much as we're not WWE guys, JP, another really good card.
It is, and it's a well-organized card, and it's a card that makes sense for a lot of the booking that they've done. Like Logan Paul Ricochet is something from the Rumble. And we're talking about it at SummerSlam. It's like,
boss, I love that. Because you could have put Logan Paul against somebody else. I'm sure that wasn't a first choice of Vince McMahon or whoever is allegedly in charge over there right now. Or maybe they're sneaking it in while he's on the hospital bed. But, and I hope whatever he's had done to him hurts. But outside of that, I do feel like Triple H or whoever has, got Ricochet a really good spot there. And that sounds fucking boss. Really I'd be bullish on if this was a proper pay-per-view like AEW, with how hot the Jey Uso Roman Reigns thing has gotten again. And that's one thing where I'll concede to Matty, where I was saying how boring the Bloodline story had gotten. We won't get into whether it needs the title or not, or whether the title's even really a factor in this match. But as far as making that story hot again, and killing it when it comes to quarter hours and overall ratings, this is the hottest story in wrestling. And if it was on proper pay-per-view and not on the network / Peacock, they'd be selling a lot of fucking pay-per-views based on this. So I've got to give credit there.
It is. And this card has got a bit for everyone. And it's got stuff it feels like they've had to work, with the exception, I'd say, for Seth Rollins, Finn Balor, which feels like it's I don't know if they're going to do the cash in, because it feels like that's really the story there. You've just got to sit through 25 minutes of a match that you can imagine exactly what it's like, and you've already seen it before, even if you haven't seen these two wrestle each other. But I think everything else, on the other hand, there's reasons for it existing. I think there's they've shifted 45,000 tickets for this. Like I say, they're going to do
45,000. Wow, that's impressive.
And they're doing these on the reg. They're doing stadium shows on the reg, and they're on a hot streak. I mean, I thought Money in the Bank was one of the weaker pay-per-views, but that didn't mean it was a weak pay-per-view. but it was on that kind of side of it. But here,
Mm.
they've got a main event that people are into. In terms of Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar, you've got that kind of blow off match. You've got Gunter Drew McIntyre, which is like you say, it's going to be plenty of shit kicking. Logan Paul Ricochet for the daft stuff. Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler is going to be probably more about like the kind of how the crowd is going to react. I think more than anything else, I just think they're going to end up booing Rousey out of the building. Like that's the thing I could see happening there. And LA Knight will win the battle royal. So it feels like it, and then you've obviously got Bloodline in the end. And I think, even with these, like in terms of bookies' favourites, there's a lot of these matches where you don't know where it's going to go. And you think that's a really good, well-booked card. And they've had this in place for a while. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I don't like myself for having to say it, but I have to be honest.
Well, we'll have you and Matty giving it the full preview on the weekend show this week, and obviously we'll have it's a WWF pay-per-view, so we'll have a Matty on Spotlight next week to break it down. So look forward to part 4 of did Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns lead the world title after Roman Reigns, I think even Matty agrees, wipes the floor with Jey Uso. Isn't a fucking chance he walks out with the title. I think the betting lines tell you that as well, but still be an interesting conversation when it comes to Spotlight next week as to what this whole thing has done for Jey Uso and what next for Roman Reigns after this. But got to call a spade a spade. It's a hot product right now, and I don't love every minute of when I tune into the SmackDowns. In fact, this week I think I watched the first half, and they had the Roman and Jey segment as the opener, and then once it got to the second file on Daily Motion, Sky BT Sky Sports, whatever channel it's on, I just turned it off. I was like, I'm done now. I've had enough. This is enough. I've got G1 to catch up on. I'm gonna move on here.
I saw a tiny little bit.
LA Knight you got up on Saturday morning and watched it.
I didn't have it long. LA Knight.
One thing. If we want to give him some criticism, like LA Knight, like I think most of us in the sane world look at that and like, look, it's LA Knight. Like I don't really get it why he's so over. But it's like everything in wrestling. It's like, what the oldies needed to learn about Danielson back in the day, what they needed to learn about Punk back in the day. Doesn't matter why someone's over. If they're over, they're over. That man is fucking over. His promo on SmackDown, which was funny when he called what did they call Top Dollar?
Uncle Phil. That was brilliant.
But like he's got a confidence and a main events just feel about him. You can say he rips off The Rock and Austin, and he absolutely does. But Hogan ripped people off. Jesse Ventura would cry about it all the time, and there's a lot of that through wrestling history. So I can almost forgive it for just how fucking molten hot it is. And then you look at the SummerSlam card, and he's in the Battle Royal, and it's like I know I got some pushback on where he should have won the Money in the Bank, and then he didn't. But you've got to give him something, surely. Like they can't just carry on having him lower in the cards, not really ever just going for it with someone who's this over. Like he should be in a main event position, whatever you think of him. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I never talk about wrestlers deserving something because I just think it's an overplayed thing we talk about in our circles. But if anyone ever deserved a shot just for the work they've done and how over they've gotten, you got to give them something. You've just got to give them something.
Hey, he was the one who had to wrestle Bray Wyatt in that time. And he's got more over than Bray Wyatt kind of ever has. But yeah, it works. It's his wrestling. That's where the real main event. Like, is he going to be? But it's WWE. Can you get away with it? Yeah, you probably can. You'll do enough.
No one's that good anyway. It's the 3.5 star promotion, isn't it? He'd be perfect. Maybe he'll win the Rumble, maybe, but then Cody should win that. So yeah, it's a tough one to thread. Don't trust them. Where's Bray? Andy asks. There have been reports of him potentially coming back. Who was it? The short straw that the same might work him. Is it LA Knight again? Somebody. There's definitely been talk about that.
Can he just come back as a human fucking being?
Cody, maybe
just a normal person. Speaking fucking normally and not just some weird fucking arsehole. Like, you just don't need it.
I know. I will say I hope he's all right. You know, there you go. That
Yeah,
you'll get that often from me, but obviously there's been a genuine issue there that's caused them to go away, but it's probably been for the best. While WWE's obviously been a lot stronger with them without them there. But there we go. That's SummerSlam. So yeah, while we're on WWE, it won't take us more than 5 or 10 minutes. Feel free to. We see the numbers in Spotify now. We know when people skip ahead. I'm just glad we timestamps get used, JP. I spend a lot of time on them. So thank you, folks, who use the timestamps. We are going to be talking the G1 in about 10 minutes. But while we're on WWE, there was an NXT pay-per-view at the weekend. WJP. The Great American Bash, the name of which I learned in the pre-show. Anything you want to talk about from it? I think it'll be the most interesting is Gabe Stevenson, I'd say. Followed by a very good main event. And I suppose the Dominic Mysterio factor as well. But they're probably your main talking points. Where do you want to start?
Let's talk about Gable Stevenson. Let's just go straight into that.
Fucking state of a mate. Oh, I couldn't have laughed more. I noticed, by the way, Matty did a little mini review on the Discord today of that show, and somehow left that match out, almost like his monitor went out or something like that. When his guaranteed locked on WWE pay-per-view main eventer / world champion Gabe Stevenson came out, or Stevenson, however you want to pronounce it, came out and just look. I mean, we can criticize him and he deserves it, and he's a cunt too, so fuck him. But like, they shouldn't have put him in the position. You shouldn't be having your quote unquote debut match on a pay-per-view, even if it's NXT. Like, I feel like that you were asking too much of him from a start. And I watched it having seen all the bad reviews, thinking it was going to be one of the worst things I've ever seen. I didn't think he was that bad. It's got like a 2-on cage match, and I feel that's a bit drastic. Maybe the finish is a reason for that as well. But he did look like unpolished, and he did look awkward. And it does say a lot that a crowd of all people is going to cheer. I know he was lovely to Matty, but you're going to cheer Baron Corbin over WWE's next great hope. I got a bit of joy out of it. I can't say it, JP. It was a pretty meandering 10-minute match, and then the crowd took over, and then they did the DQ, and poor Clark Gable, whatever his name is, looked like he couldn't have been any more uncomfortable with the booze he was getting, and couldn't look like really he had any less aptitude to be a pro wrestler. Like, I feel like my bet is pretty comfortably safe at this point, JP.
I think it's I think it's after this. You saw a guy who, let's face it, he doesn't look like he's got the aptitude necessarily. He can throw suplexes and stuff, but he's not. What they want out of him, and this is order to justify his contract, is to see, is he going to sink or swim? And he didn't even win the match. It was a double fucking count out. Like, I was astonished. I was laughing during this.
You.
I felt bad. Because I just thought this is just an unwinnable situation against a crowd. If they're cheering Baron Corbin over you, like, it's not there. But he didn't have the, like, and it's not like what they did with Kurt Angle. And I think the thing to remember with Kurt Angle's it wasn't his first ever match, and he wrestled in WWE. He'd been in Memphis for fucking ages. He'd wrestled in like the NWA.
And that was the plan. Matty tried to spin that today. Well, it was kind of like what they did, but no, that was the plan. He wanted Kurt Angle to be a heel. Like,
they wanted him to be a heel, and he took to it.
Yeah. Oh, it begs the question, like Chris says here, how much of it's because of his past, the sexual assault allegations, however you want to put it, against them. Doesn't seem like a good human, is all I will say in my opinion from the things I've read. I think that crowd, that being a hardcore smart crowd, I think they know that. And I think you've probably part getting rejected for that as well, which, yeah, good. I'm glad. I think keep him out.
There'll be part of it, and then there'll be the feeling he hasn't earned it. Like, because they love that stuff as well. That he's getting just sort of thrown in there. But yeah, he hasn't got the aptitude for it. Like, he'll want to go and do the Olympics and the other stuff. This is just going to confirm to his mind, actually, I want out. I just don't want to do it.
Well, that's why they wouldn't
do UFC.
They know his heart's not in it. They know it. So they're just like,
why didn't win. And it was just, it was just kind of weird. It was compelling viewing. I mean, I saw more of this show than I intended to. I haven't got like extensive thoughts, but I had it on kind of like around me while I was doing walking dogs through a field, watching like
it's a good show.
But as a show, they've improved. Like, I think they have, like, without, the other stuff. That was the bit that was like the worst of like the kind of wrestling.
Comfortably.
Outside of that, even though I'm not mad on people, and it's so character in broad strokes in all caps, like, kind of, in place. They're all characters and they've all got wacky gimmicks and the rest of it. They've gotten better. You can't argue with that. And like you mentioned about the main event, like, you know, maybe we're moving too far from
no, go for it. I mean, it's
but the main event was really good. I mean, I was hoping that Ilya would be moved up. Like, I think he could be. He's like kind of feels like he's done his stint in NXT. But
he's
then
fantastic, isn't he? He's like a Gunther anywhere, like Walter, like where, you know, standing there watching him in Germany, or even when he made it over to, you know, when they first brought him over to the UK. Remember CMJ with his manager when he first came into Progress? Never thought that story would end with a WWE contract. Like, he never seemed like the guy. And even when they made cuts, I kind of thought he might be the guy to go, but he's obviously impressed the right people. I don't know about him on the main roster, but when I do parachute in, he's out there having a banger and in a big position here as well with Carmelo Hayes, who looked very good in the match as well. He comes across as a megastar when he makes his entrance. He's not many NXT success stories the last few years, although it's a couple on this card you can definitely talk about. He's one, and this was, you know, for our audience who are maybe more work rate minded and you know, are more wrestling for points minded and probably aren't as you know, likely to check out an NXT show. I think you should watch Gabe Stevenson just to have a laugh, and you should genuinely watch this. This was a four-star match, I'd say, in the main event of an NXT show with a decent crowd as well. I wouldn't say you know, go too overboard and say it felt like a takeover, but it felt like a good crowd who were very much into this.
It's as close to what they've managed to do with this crop of, since they've moved away from signing up indie stars who've wrestled for years, and they're going with people kind of from scratch, with a couple of notable exceptions. But it was just a good matchup having Ilya Dragunov in there, just because his style. I mean, and again, as a match, like, I thought it had just like a nice pace to it. I thought, you know, obviously it worked out slow at the beginning. There was enough kind of big moves, but that crowd were just kind of with them all of the way, that they're invested in it. And there's an uptick in ratings as well, which I happen to think is probably because as a result of Dominic Mysterio, who I never thought I'd say this sentence, adds that real element of star presence. Him and Rhea Ripley, I should say, to this.
Let's see Williams, you say,
and Rhea Ripley as well, I should say. Like,
yeah, she was great. You know, the spot where she kind of ducked under the Wesley dive and then putting them through the table, and she's the one you can get away with that with, and she pulls it off really well. Oh yeah, that was great. I mean, look, whatever you want to say about Dominic Mysterio, like, I've always been very negative on Dominic Mysterio. Obviously, that Mania appearance, I think, turned us around a little bit. Me seeing him live in Manchester and seeing that it wasn't just piped in noise. The heat was real, and seeing how well the act worked. You know, well, that's the thing. A good quality act can come from anywhere, and it can be a bad wrestler. And that was the heat for a lot of the time with Dominic Mysterio. He's getting better, but he's still not very good. But I thought he was hidden quite well in this three-way with Ali and Wesley. It's like he wasn't falling behind in the way that I would have imagined. If you'd have asked me in January, I would have pictured this match going. I felt like he kept up for the most part.
He did. And I think they've played a blinder with this in some ways, moving him into NXT, where he can have work regularly, slightly out of the way. But
he should have always been there.
Yeah, should have always been there. But in some ways, he's coming back with star presence, though, which he wouldn't have got if he hadn't been moved to the main roster. And that star presence is the thing that really, hey, look, it's elevated ratings. We're talking about, it's not a million, you know, if they start to catch fire, I imagine at some point they'll go to him and Carmelo Hayes, and that will be like, that'll be like a kind of a real test. Okay, how well will this do? How well will this actually draw as well? The match kind of did what it had to do, but him doing this gimmick, him learning as well and working, and in an environment as well where there's a lot less pressure than there is, and he'll still be around on Raw.
Yeah,
it will help. I didn't see this coming. Like, none of this. It's one of the things I go, oh, I got that wrong with him, and you go, yeah, quite happy to admit that. Like, he has proven everyone else.
We were still right. We were right. It's just worked.
He's not a good wrestler, but it has worked. Yeah, that's probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, he was shit, and he's still not great, but like, the act works, and they found gold, like they have really, and that whole stable, it's been great for all of them. You know, keep on to call him Punisher Martinez. What's his name? Damien. What's his name? Like he's fucking
Damien
Damien
Priest.
Priest has done really well out of it. I think like you say there, Rhea Ripley's done really well out of it. Don't really want to see Finn Balor wrestle, but he's a bit fresher coming out of it. Yeah, it's a home run in all regards, and it's helping. NXT's never going to come near Dynamite when it comes to the 1849, but the overall rating, it's in that ballpark. And yeah, Dom is responsible for it one of those weeks as well. So yeah, things seem to be working over there. Was there anything else from the show you wanted to mention or put over at all? Gallus came on my screen. I skipped over that. Sorry, there's not enough time.
Very terrible football shit. They had they're just all treading water there. Those Mafia lads won.
I thought the kickoff match was really good. I hate the name metaphor against Nathan Fraser, Dragon Lee, Valentia Frost, and Ulisa Leon. I think of the names. Yeah, I didn't know those names going in either. But Nathan Fraser is the one that we know.
Yeah.
Thought it was a really, and Dragon Lee obviously as well. Really, really good kickoff match. I really enjoyed that. Thought it was weird though. It was a bit like watching like the remnants of NXT UK in a lot of ways. Seeing Gallus knocking about, seeing Blair Davenport, the former Brie Peasley, that's not knocking about. Noam Dar, Nathan Fraser, the Coffee Brothers, Wolfgang. Everyone's
there.
There's
a promo for Tyler Bate.
Well that was the other one. Yeah. A lot of them through the show, like the ones who've survived, I suppose. The cult starving Ben Carter as the chest says. There you go. There's another potential title. I'll star that in the chat. Yeah, but yeah, it's overall. I enjoyed it as an overall show. Was there anything that stood out to you from the undercard or anything we haven't mentioned?
It's probably only someone like, say, a Roxanne Perez is someone to keep an eye on in Roxy. I mean, it's more of a general note of I probably enjoyed. I don't go into these NXT cards with high expectations. It's much more about who do they see as being potential future stars. And Roxanne Perez, who we saw as Roxy when she was became Ring of Honor women's champion.
Was that her? I didn't think that was fully realized.
She's crazily young. It's one of the things. She's 21.
Oh, you might have told me.
Yeah. She was a kid meeting Sheamus and stuff. And these photos and I felt incredibly old at that point. I was like, Jesus Christ! I remember, if she was a kid when that was happening, it's like, God sakes. And so I think for her, that's the kind of person they're kind of keen on and they'll stick around with. And it's more for those kind of names than I think being invested in Chase U, and stuff like that. They're very keen on certain people, and it's like seeing how keen are they when they get moved up to the main roster. Tiffany Stratton will be one that they'll end up doing it with. She has the kind of look that they want. But yeah, more fun than it probably should have been.
Definitely agreed. Well, on that note, we'll move on from NXT. Hello again to those of you who skipped along wanting the G1 stuff. But let's talk some G1, JP. I've got to be honest. I think maybe I'm more resigned to what this G1 is this year. But I think we were very negative. We were negative on most things last week, to be honest. It was a very negative spotlight. But you have to be sometimes if you're going to be honest. And the G1 was pretty fucking dire, at least the stuff we had to talk about last week. I think maybe I'm picking and choosing more, but I think we were very quickly, even I think with the morning after we recorded, that was Ishii Kingston. So I think that changed a lot of opinions. There's still been some awful days. Sunday, especially this week, was completely nondescript to the point where I would not recommend anybody watch it. But there's been a few gems this week, I would say. We can turn some constructive negativity into some constructive positivity. And yeah, there's been some good stuff from a couple of places as well. You might not expect this week, JP.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would say in terms of the match that, I was expecting Okada Ospreay to be great, and Ishii Kingston. I kind of expected it to be like that. I didn't expect this Gabriel Kidd Kaito Kiyomiya, which wasn't really a match. It was just more a brawl that got out of hand. I don't know if you've had a chance to see this yet.
You pushed me into watching that. It was great.
It was really fucking great because it felt like they were just trying to leather the shit out of each other. And they brawled so much and they didn't want to stop brawling. They both got a count out, which was just a finish I wasn't expecting from it. It was like the whole time it's built up in commentary that they don't want to count them out. Crowd were massively into Gabriel Kidd, especially he was with this fuck Noah. His character, he's getting over, but it's partly because he is who he is, which is he's a very good wrestler who's quite immature. And you can see it in the promos, and you can see it with this
Yeah.
stuff, but you can also see it in terms of the character he is as a wrestler, because he'll jump the gun and attack people because he can do it, but he'll ultimately lose matches as a result of it because he doesn't know how to strategize it yet. But it's working for this crowd. And Kiyomiya, he was getting cheered to a degree, but there were people who were just, I think they were more into Gabriel Kidd because it was just like it felt like he was a proper wild man character, which is often imitated normally with lads with long hair and big beards wanting to look like Bruiser Brody. But it was, I'm not saying Gabriel Kidd is Bruiser Brody Mark II, but it was very much the kind of, if you're going to do it, this is how you do it. You just look like you're going to go fucking buck wild. And this was just something that came out of nowhere. And it feels like weird because it's a match. It's not really, there is some good wrestling in there. Don't get me wrong. That happens. I think that's good for a while, but it's just more about this brawl that just doesn't fucking end. And I thought, I want to see this match in Noah after all of this. I want to see them get Gabriel Kidd in for a match like that. I think it does him the world of good. He's standing out just through virtue of having very different matches to everyone else and a different type of character.
I thought it was really smart. Like, I think if you're gonna, and again, I might not have watched this, a draw on the undercard of a show where I wanted to get to, the big matches at the end of the night. I could have easily skipped over it, but I think that's kind of what he's going to be in this tournament because, well, he's clearly not winning it. He's clearly out of the running, and it feels like he's gone together and gone like, rather than just having a run-of-the-mill G1 where I do nothing, how about, my character is there, and I'm not going to win the matches, but I'm going to make me fucking, mark on all of these wrestlers. I'm going to beat them before the bell, and I'm going to cause some mayhem. I'm going to, grab the attention or whatever. I'm going to get over as a result. And you're right, like the crowd went for it, and he did the whole. They were cheering his name and he flipped them off, didn't he? Which, I suppose, leaning into the, like you say, the Bruiser Brody, foreigner in Japan type of stuff where I don't know if it might have been a better move to just accept the cheers and enjoy it, but they were still cheering regardless afterwards. So it was absolutely fine. But yeah, that was really good. And it was, like you say, it was such an interesting way of doing the match that it did almost, and I say almost, make the crowd sympathetic to Kiyomiya. Like there was definitely there was some cheers for him. And then when he started to, as the commentary was pointing out, try and fight dirty, he started getting booed then as well. You just can't win. You just can't win. And it's easy points, isn't it, to have a go at the Noah lads. So,
take that shit serious, like proper away, like Kaito Kiyomiya is on a series of away games. Difficult away games.
And I don't necessarily disagree with the chart. I do think Gabriel Kidd can be cringe, especially when he appears on podcasts. He's just a bit of a gobshite, isn't he? Let's all be honest. But if you can harness it into a character that, maybe there could be legs in this long term. So yeah, I was glad you dragged me into seeing that, JP. I'd say the the other two big matches of the week. There's more as well we can mention, but for me, the other big matches of the week, Eddie Kingston and Tomohiro Ishii.
Oh yeah.
I say those two names, and you picture a match, don't you? And that's what they did. Hard hit suplexes, a lot of fighting spirit / I'm harder than you, chop fests, and it was. I think Eddie Kingston can get accused of being a bit cosplay, trying to be the Japanese wrestlers he's seen, of his youth, and trying to make that work in front of American crowds, and people like us love it, and then his detractors don't like that idea that he's doing this cosplay thing, even down to wearing the yellow for Kawada and stuff like that. But I'm sorry, you can't watch this and say anything other than it worked, because he was over as fuck. Like the crowd were loving it. He wasn't an outsider doing an impression of Japanese strong style or King's Road or whatever you want, whichever style you want to say he's aping at a given moment. He was just an American badass wrestler who's got a lot of charisma, who's got a lot of connection to any crowd in any language in any building you want to pour him into. And he was getting cheered louder than Ishii was in this one. His big moves were getting big reactions. His big kickouts were getting big reactions. The finish got a big shocked because I suppose they were kind of hoping he'd go over there, but he can walk out with his head held high. That was one of the. I love the Shingo match as well, but this was maybe 4.25. If it wasn't for another match this week, would probably be the match of the G1 this so far for me. Absolutely loved it, and yeah. So, and again, the Ishii's a bit like Suzuki, seen the formula a million times. He's a bit more meat to the bone than Suzuki with Ishii, but my rampant fandom of Ishii is a couple of years old now, where it's like I might pick and choose an Ishii match as bad as that is to say in 2023, but this felt like prime Ishii too, and it was just a war. Loved it, absolutely must see match from the G1 this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the best, like up to that point, as you say, it was the best match in the G1, and it was because the thing that this G1 I think has been missing is quality control. And these were lads who took it up a notch, and we haven't seen that in a lot. There's a lot of matches where people again are like it's character work, but they're not actually thinking on about like they're in a tournament for points, therefore should be looking to kind of win them. And this one had that kind of real feel of a struggle. I mean, diving headbutts and the like are never things that can necessarily make you feel comfortable, but it did make the whole thing kind of
fucking cool, wasn't it?
A bit more spectacular. And I imagine, again, as New Japan's strong champion, it sets up Ishii coming over for a title defense. That's the kind of stuff that goes down like, you know, like manna from heaven, really.
Definitely. And that works for me too. And yeah, hold on. If you haven't seen it, go out and watch it. And yeah, as I said in the chat there, like just seeing Eddie like around Japan this week. So he posted a picture of himself, didn't he? And we call it in the Ribera Steakhouse, getting his jacket, but he was wearing one of WH's t-shirts, like knocking around Japan as well, which I loved.
I love that.
The Post Puro t-shirt. Like he's what a great man he is. Despite all the kickoff about all that, he's still proudly wearing it in Japan. And then he met Okada as well. As said there, like there's a great.
Who didn't rip the t-shirt off him? I assume they've made a documentary about it for New Japan World.
Amazing. He's just living his life right now, and it's fucking. I mean, I'll give Crony Khan credit there, because I think the right thing to do for your own promotion might have been to stop Eddie doing this G1 and have him for Blood and Guts and have him for the ROH pay-per-view and have him for the Wembley build. And there is that negative, but like I don't think anybody with a heart could have taken this away, because it's just a joy to watch. I love his Instagram right now. I love just following it. It's been everything I've wanted, and they were the two matches out of his block. Now it's a bit of a downhill swing, isn't it, for Eddie? But like those Shingo and Ishii got those matches, and they were both great. So you know, I think we'll see more of him in New Japan going forward. But yeah, the other match I suppose definitely want to highlight, and it's the obvious one, Okada Ospreay from tail end of the week. Managed to catch that one live, almost missed it. Not used to Okada and Ospreay going less than 20 minutes. I managed to I was trying to sign up to New Japan World quickly and missed like the first 5 minutes. So actually we watched it today, because they did an Okada Ospreay match, or more to the point, an Okada match where there was no shit at the start of the match. They just started. And it started, and we got 20 minutes of fucking awesome. I love that match today. Rewatching it, I thought it was even better. I thought, Ospreay was great about getting the match jump started, and there's just a pace that only he can kind of do and pull out of an Okada, and a creativity when it comes to the dives and the apron spots and all the other stuff they kind of did around the ring that made it interesting. I thought they had a great finishing sequence. I thought the doing the Rainmaker, but it's the what you call it, the one that the hidden blade that
hidden blade,
Ospreay does was that was really cool. And just the whole moment of Ospreay going over Okada and just it meaning something, and him finally doing it, and him going backstage and sitting there eating all his donuts was just so well done. Like it was just a great 20 minutes, a great less than 20 minutes, a great post match, and just I think now with this G1, I just want every big time Kazuchika Okada match to be less than 20 minutes, because this was great, but it still left some on the table. It still made me think that might be a Wrestle Kingdom match some way this year.
It reminded me of the Okada Omega match from the G1, which was, I mean, I think it was better, but it was half an hour, but that was like a half an hour sprint, because the matches they were having were an hour time limit draw before then. So, and this is how it felt, because it was just like ultra fast paced, like I say, just none of the boring shit on there. And I think it is a case where, like, for this, like Ospreay working as pure babyface as well, just the dynamics were fascinating. And I think this is something that I'm hoping they do with Okada, where it's the idea that they've spoken about him being the ace and holding all of these records in New Japan, and he's getting bitter at the younger guys. And I think at some point it's leading towards like a heel turn, which would freshen him up.
Totally.
Like again, as a character. And I was hoping we were getting towards this because the crowd leaned very heavily into it. But yeah, it's the match of the G1 so far. It's not a surprise. If you'd ask me if I remember it at the end, going through top 10 match lists,
Isn't that interesting?
Probably not.
Because that's the thing. Most G1s, the one negative I was going to say, like as much as there's been positive things to say this week, most G1s, like especially like peak G1 era, you know, when you go back to like 2015, 16, 17, like we were watching these matches that we thought were match of the year candidates. And we were like, this is amazing, special, amazing matches. And then you were right, it gets to the end of the year, be like, Ishii fought who? When was it? And it's just too much at once. Whereas now it's a little bit more popcorn, isn't it? It's like popcorn wrestling. I almost don't have those high expectations. I almost know what these matches are. I know they're going to be.
Yeah.
They almost feel like lesser versions of, like, you know, Okada and Ospreay. As much as I can rave about that, you know, they're going to have a better. I don't really want it to go 40 minutes, but they probably have a better match on a Wrestle Kingdom stage. Kingston and Ishii might have a better one in them. Kingston and Shingo might have a better one in them. You know, it says something that I'm calling them matches the G1 and the 4.25 stars, which, you know, G1's past, we'd be throwing fives at stuff, wouldn't we? That would ultimately end up not meaning as much as we thought it did in the moment. You know, I don't know if they've ground us down to be a bit more realistic about what this G1 actually is, JP, and we're just kind of like, our expectations are now a bit lower, so we're kind of just taking these little bits of food when we can get them.
We are, aren't we? I suppose we're getting towards the quarterfinals where you'd want the business end to pick up. It's how many, it's how many of the nonsense people get through. The people who are going to go out their way because they're going to be booked in matches which are going to have tons of interference, which I fear with like a David Finlay, for example. I mean, I've got David Finlay and Evil as the top two in C block, which is kind of a nightmare scenario. I don't mind David Finlay, but I know that they're just going to book shitloads of interference and the rest of it. It's, I mean, I have to say as well, also give a shout for another very good match with Jeff Cobb, Zack Sabre Jr. Like that was that was a very good match. I would say. That's probably at 3.754, but it has picked up in the last week. I expect it to pick up for the quarterfinals. Hopefully, I'm hoping we get Kaya Kiyomiya, Okada in the quarters. It should be the thing that they kind of set up if Okada wins the block and Kiyomiya looks like finishing second. It's how little we talk about Sonada. I heard them talking about Voices of Wrestling about it, but the guy just, like, crowds are down, everything else. It's not like it's got any kind of buzz for it. And it's like, if there was a different IWGP champion, would we be thinking about things in a different way? But it's like he's duty bound to win his block all of the way. And it's the thing that's kind of taken away from the block A. He should have been on his heels from the get-go of, like, actually, he's got all these young guys that he has to work with. He should be having great matches with them. Be proving like, okay, this is the guy who can do it. And I can't think of any match. Like, I'm sure somebody will point out, oh, this was a good match, but really, is it stuff that should stand out from everything else?
I mean, the match was all right. The Gabe Kidd match was all right. Yeah,
they're afterthoughts, though, aren't they?
That's the thing. All right. Probably isn't the standard for your IWGP champion, is it? But yeah, we're past the halfway point, and we are hurtling quite quickly towards the quarterfinals. And I reckon JP, we've got about 10 days left, something like that, in real days, not in tournament days. So not long to go. So it's kind of flown over. Quite. That's a positive. You can
2 more block days.
Is that it? And then we're done. Jesus Christ, he paced them out quite well, so it's 10 real days, like I say. But yeah, once you get the quarter-final days, the semi-final day, and the final day, there's still a fair amount of shows, but that's blown over quite quickly, hasn't it? So there we are. Well, what's not blown over too quickly is the grapple pick'ems that we have debuted this year. Again, thank you to King of the Mountain Connor, who joined us on the pre-show. It's his choice. It's he's the reason we're doing Christy in TNA as a deep cut later this month. But in the pickings, JP, it's been all change. K-Punk is on top on 53 points. Jamesy remains in third on 51 points. I won't even reference where I am, but in second, there he is. Grapple JP, crime in the rankings, 51 points. JP, hats off, mate. What's happened? What's the turnaround?
I don't know, because I can't see any. I've gone with a Zack Sabre Jr. Will Ospreay final in the end. I've gone like pretty buck wild, because I just figure they can do that this year. I have no idea how I'm in second place for it, considering the start I had was absolutely. I was just like nowhere, but just coming back into it there. 52 points off the league, settled in Champions League places, which I'm happy with. Looks like me and James, it looks like 3 into the Champions League. And then beyond that, you've got the next 2 going into Europe. So, I mean, I don't know, Benno, Conference League is there, but you want to be doing Conference League.
I mean, it looks bad, but I will just say I'm only on 50 points. Leader is on 53. You're on 51.
Yeah.
So I could easily pull it back. But I have had some bad days.
It's like the championship, mate. It's tight at the top of the table.
There's a day where I got a perfect score. I still don't know how that happened. And then I won less than a perfect score. And then it's been 4, 3, and 4 the last 3 G1 nights. So I need things to turn around if I'm going to stay in there with the heat. But yeah, it's tight. Poor Real Hamilton is still rock bottom. I don't know what he picked, but like, he's just got no hope at all of catching there. He's 5 adrift of second from bottom, D Sykes there. So yeah, there we go. Maybe it'll be all changed by the time we do the weekend.
He recaps and covers them. It's just not fair on Ian. Sorry,
no,
really
poor bloke. I know he's in there more so than us. He's
so much about
he's recapping every day, so he's having to watch all of this shit. Unfortunately, whereas we can be a little bit more pick and choose, and I think you've got to be for your own sanity with a modern G1. But yeah, things are looking up, JP. So yeah, bit of a positive G1 talk for a bit of a difference from last week. But
if I can fit in, I'm not going to go into it for a long time, but a match I do want people to go out and find if they can, and it's from Stardom's 5-star Grand Prix. It's the opening day. It's the only match I've kind of really seen, mainly because it's what I spoke about, and it was Shuri versus Suzu Suzuki, who is fucking class, and she's 20, and she's just a prodigious talent. And it's a 15-minute time limit, so everything's worked at a fucking pace. Like no one's fucking around in these matches. To go out there, like kind of doing batshit moves. She did like a German off the apron, just onto the floor on Shuri. She's not been caught by anyone either, just like onto the fucking mats. And yeah, it's a really good, hard hitting match. I can highly recommend it. Up around, I think that it's 11 minutes, so 4 to 4.25 range, but I highly recommend that. Also got to see Mariah's May match, and to be honest, she has come a long way. She's coming a long way. It's different because she's a lot taller. I mean, she was the match I saw was her against Azumi on AZM, as you like to think of in there, who's another one of the kind of like freakishly young talents that they have in Stardom. And it was like a 6-minute match, and it was fine. It moved at a pace, which at times did seem like that's a lot, but then again, she's in quite an elite tournament, and let's face it, she's going to get better. Like she's going to progress so much, and for someone like her with her look, you've got to be looking to the bigger companies, really longer term. But this whole grounding, being a character full-fledged in Stardom, is stuff that's it's going to serve her well for the future. So it's good to see.
Definitely. Well, yeah. On that note, now that our tournament season is out the way, just a couple of more matters. We've got a Dark Side of the Ring coming up. Bam Bigelow episode we've got to talk about. But while we're sort of talking wrestling history, we definitely do need to reference the passing of Adrian Street today. Been massive news. I was shocked at like the amount of mainstream coverage for it, JP. All over all of your mainstream sites, the Mirror, BBC. I won't give the Mail the credit. I'm not sure SE Scoops counts, but shout out to the ex Torch lads, Haydon, who's over there, run things over at SE Scoops. So I'll count them. They count definitely. I'm entirely doing cracking work over there. But yeah, been major news. Like I say, made it as far as the BBC front page today. I think the biggest thing everyone's going to reference when it comes to Adrian Street. Quite interesting there. Is that Packy's working on an indie show they've chosen for BBC. It's from 2008. Can't tell you who that is. Who's wrestling there, but we're still going at that point. But the fact that it's made like the BBC homepage tells you everything. And there's one of the pitches that everyone's going to reference. Even saw the other version of that on CM Punk's Instagram today. That famous story of him going to Wales, wasn't it? And which is where he's from. He never got on with his dad. Never wanted to be a miner like his dad, and he went there and kind of talked his dad and his mates who we also hated into taking a picture with him. The classic one is there. They got it on the post site, which is just like one of the greatest like images you could think of in wrestling history of like these hard-working Welsh manual laborers, and this this now turned pro wrestler in a wig with makeup and his title belt on, kind of talking to getting that picture taken. Obviously, that's the one thing I think a lot of people will recognize as like an image that will stand the test of time. Apparently, he did beat the shit out of Jimmy Savile. I did see that.
I was
he
going to
was
say,
described as disgraced TV performer Jimmy Savile, which is probably letting him off lightly a little bit when you're talking Savile. But obviously, we did the rounds.
massive nonce would really be the
well, yeah, that would probably
one of the most
too.
evil people in this fucking country. For the stuff he's done. Fair play to him.
But yeah, oh yeah, and his wife talked to BBC and talked about the fact that he had heart issues, which is led to a brain bleed, unfortunately, procedure, which is what led to his death. But yeah, one of the most famous exports as far as British wrestling goes. Someone your dad knows, someone your uncle will know, and someone American wrestling fans will know as a name who had massive influence when it comes to the gimmick he did. We've been talking about it a couple of weeks ago, weren't we, with the different people that it definitely influenced, and definitely a gimmick of its time. But lots to kind of mind there as far as like his runs in Mid-South, and being a genuine household name when it comes to pro wrestling. Continental being a stop off place as well. But yeah, just someone maybe a bit before your and my time, JP, or someone your dad, or like you say your uncle who used to be back in the day into wrestling, could probably tell you all kinds of stories about.
That's the thing, isn't it, with him, is that it's slightly before my time on there as well. But like, fair play to him, and lived to a cracking age, 82, like as well. I mean, like it's obviously sad for him and his wife, who was his valet as well.
Yeah, they were on remember they were on Clash of the Castle last year. Like they showed them, didn't they, front row? Probably Regal's doing, but like I forgot that was a thing. Yeah.
But looking at like his like kind of career, like this was a guy who worked NWA, like say Continental, worked Jim Crockett as well, worked like kind of all throughout the joint promotions, and I'm imagining did like the catch tours and the rest of it and everything else as well. It's just I suppose for me, there's a documentary out about him, and I think for me, as someone who I was always aware of Adrian Street, but in some ways he felt I always kind of had probably viewed him as like, well, this is Britain's answer to Gorgeous George, except it's just much more glam rock influence than anything else. That it follows that. And interesting, we spoke about Adrian Adonis as well. It kind of like it's
that's what I mean. Yeah,
like it fits in with that as well. But yeah,
there's a through line, isn't there, with all those acts. That's it. But yeah, obviously, I mean that's someone who you could absolutely mine and do like a dark side of the ring episode on. But yeah, it's someone who it's like is Jeremy Teller. Liam says here is the documentary on him. But yeah, it's just interesting to see like the length and breadth of the coverage.
Former darts player.
could be. But yeah, go check out the BBC article on it. There's actually, there's a lot of good work in there. Nathan Bevan, I'm pretty sure John Lister was involved in helping put that together as well. So there's plenty there. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it as it did break tonight at time of recording as well. But yeah, speaking of Dark Side and speaking of wrestling history, we did have the last thing we got on our show notes to talk about tonight, JP, is Dark Side of the Ring, Bam Bigelow, which is an episode I know you were massively looking forward to, as Bam Bam made it into your 5-1. Check the Grapple Spotlight Patreon archives for JP's top 5 wrestlers of all time. Bam Bam made it in there, and yeah, how did you think Dark Side of the Ring did as far as doing him justice?
It was better than the Abdullah the Butcher episode. Not as good as the Adrian Adonis one. I think this one is much more of a probably much more of a sort of formulaic documentary as such, and it doesn't go perhaps in depth as much. It's more like he's traveling lots, therefore he's a big guy and he's doing these bumps, therefore he enters into kind of pain pill addiction and the rest of it. It's like the kind of tragic part. But it was weird in the sense that he didn't have like this kind of home life which was quite brutal or anything else. Like it was like his wife loved him even when they got divorced and he ended up living in Florida. he had like a good relationship generally with his kids. His daughter tells a terrifying story of her being a toddler. Sorry, voice is going on me there. Of being a toddler and being like him falling asleep at the wheel because he's on like loads of various pain pills. The real interest is probably the stuff at the start of him, at the start of the documentary, where they're talking about like kind of his early run in WWF, where he's brought in and he was like teaming with Hogan at the first Survivor Series, I want to say in '88. And you thought he was going to be a big star, and then he kind of went away. And this was kind of the focus of him. Like it's like he's interested in like that stuff early in his career. He looks like a prodigy, like the stuff he's doing, and like the way he's coming off. It's like this guy is always like a kind of like a big star. It's always a shame for me. Like his run in ECW was successful, and the stuff with Taz was great. And I think the Talking Heads I was more predisposed to liking because it was Taz and Shane Douglas and DDP, and you know,
I think DDP was telling the truth.
No.
No, he was like, "Oh, I knew him in the '80s in the Jersey Shore." I was like, "Did you though?" I knew he was going to be a success. Did you?
Didn't have was it Jersey Triad? That was the name of their stable.
I always like that stable.
I did as well. Like, and he was a guy who, like, obviously in Japan, he'd had like really good runs as well because that kind of character and his look is going to get over in Japan. It's just he should have been bigger than what it was. It's like he carried LT Lawrence Taylor to a match, and he's fucked afterwards when he's up there with Salt and Pepper. He is an absolute state. That's all Bam Bigelow, like managing to do that on like when Vince needed it, when the company wasn't doing very well, and it was just like, okay, they trusted him enough to do it. It's just probably he never got. There's so much more you could go into with his career. There's probably the way he's used in WCW and stuff like that. But there's not enough time necessarily with it. But I think it's a good episode. It's probably not one of the best ones of this series because I think there's still stuff from it that perhaps they could have gone into further depth with, but just didn't have the time.
I really enjoyed it. I mean, Bam Bam's someone who like it's funny. Like as a kid, like I was, you know, because we watched the '80s stuff in the early '90s was kind of my childhood of watching all the ref videos, and I just didn't really, other than I think it's the Survivor Series he's on where he's on the back cover. Like I don't think I really computed that he was in WWF in that period, like when I was a kid. So like my main introduction to him was 1994-5 $1 Million Corporation kind of era into, you know, teaming with Diesel and all of that stuff. And like thinking he was like a wrestler of the 90s. And then I remember it blowing my mind when like me and our Peter had like the Survivor Series at 88 or 89 box. And it was like, Bam Bigelow, you didn't do WWF in the 80s. What? Like it just didn't make sense because he felt like he was of that period, not that period.
He's young.
And then to watch this and realize that's the thing. Because he, you know, I think a computer, well, he must have been young, but to realize how young he was, the fact that he was got a WWF deal a year into like pretty much he was straight out of training, working for WWF and doing stuff with Hogan and being like at that, you know, that typical Hogan's best friend who's going to eventually turn on him type of role. And like it was, I'd never really thought about it in detail of like, it was an interesting trivia note, but of course the fucking Jackals came. Of course, all like the older veteran types. So like, cause we make those jokes about Bossman being really young in those days, and I bet you he dealt with the same thing. Like, you're 20, what? Fuck you! I've been in this business for 20 years, and I'm 40 something. You know what I mean? Like, Bam Bam and Bossman got away with it because they looked older, but you know the wrestlers backstage knew they were only kids and probably treated them like they were kids. So like, it shone a bit of a light for me on like, okay, well, that's what happened. So Vince took a real liking to him right away because that was the thing. Even when they showed you the training footage of him and, you know, he gets the tattoo done, like amazingly had that footage of him actually getting the tattoo done. But like once they added that, you just see him in training doing drills like, yep, that guy's special. Yep, I can understand why people immediately knew this was going to be a gigantic star in wrestling because it was a big guy who moved like no one else did. And he did that his entire career, didn't he? Right through. But it's shocking that, yeah, he was in the WWF that early. And like, I hadn't really filled in the gaps. I hadn't realized he did a bit of WCW/NWA, you know, in that period between his WWF runs. And yeah, they give a bit of short shift to it. They don't really go into like the Japan period during that time, which is a little bit of a blind spot for me. It's always cool whenever I see him like stood next to Vader, like in the later Japan stuff. That's always a proper cool visual of two fucking ass kicking, big guys who can also fly. And the stuff I've seen of it like is awesome. That'd be a fun mixtape to do at some point as well. But that's what I mean. It was like, but then he was like, so they go through that, they go through the return to WWF. And then it's like, I distinctly remember buying the WWF magazine in like 96 when he left. And literally Vince Russo was writing, and I always remember this. It was the last article in the magazine, and it said, just a note to let everybody know that Bam Bam Bigelow is retired from wrestling and is now a full-time fisherman in his home state of Jersey or whatever it said. Good luck with the fishing, Bammer. And it was like a salute type of thing. Off he goes. As a kid, I just bought it. I was like, oh, well, Bam Bam Bigelow retired, then he's done. No, he was in fucking ECW. I just didn't know. And then he turns up in WCW, and then he has another kind of. He was fucking everywhere, was the thing, wasn't it?
He was.
Like, yeah, it's madness. Like, I mean, obviously, that ECW runs massively. The triple threat and all of that stuff into the famous Taz match. I'd see all that later, obviously, but like, yeah, crazy.
There's so much of him, and ECW was the place where it's like, this is the potential of how good he could be. And in fact, when they brought him into WCW, he was there to be an opponent for Goldberg. Like, it was setting him up to go in there like straight away because he attacks him.
They kept doing those brawls, didn't they, with the security separating them and that. I remember that, the yellow shirt security.
WCW at that point in time didn't really do anything with him. Whereas in ECW, he felt special because he was this guy from WWF who could still go, could work that kind of style, but also had that attitude that fitted in with ECW as well. And you think of the Spike Dudley series and how, like, he made Spike Dudley. Like, I mean, nearly killed him as well. Should also be noted. But like at the same time, him losing to Spike Dudley was something that guys like him never did, and he did. And then afterwards, it became a thing, and it made Spike Dudley the Giant Killer. It was, the Taz stuff is stuff that's ingrained in my head. That crowd that night is the closest to like a football crowd that you saw at that point in time, where half of it is because in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Half of it is for Bigelow, and then there's traveling fans from New York because there's a crowd of like 3,000 there as well. And so they're like, it's just like it's like a piece of theatre. All of the stuff they managed to do, it's great. And when they're talking about the details of it,
Taz telling that story is just fantastic. Like, he's just like, he even says, doesn't he, like, I'm an old school guy, I hate breaking kayfabe type of thing. But it was more detail than we've ever known, because that's a spot that would be on the opening to every ECW pay-per-view pretty much after it, and VHS and whatever, it'd always make it, wouldn't it? But like, and the one on the ramp as well, obviously that was the other one when they recreated it. But like, the detail of that one, that like, they pulled the boards away, and then like the other guy told them when that was done so they could get back in the ring to do the spot, and then the trust that Bam Bam had, like, to be able to do that spot and not hit like the metal parts of the ring that are underneath and nail that so perfectly, and it be so shocking. Because obviously, there's the ramp one, and there's the Big Show and Lesnar stuff. They didn't do the and then it became a thing, didn't it? But it was proper shocking at the time. Like, it was proper new. It was a new spot that you didn't see, like a fucking whole hole coming in the ring, and it was realistic, and it was a great finish. Because I thought it was interesting when Taz told the story. He's like, yeah, Paul Lee rang and said you're losing the title to Bam Bam. He's like, yeah, cool. I bet he wasn't like, yeah, cool, but that was a good way of selling it to him as well. Well, this is the finish. How would you possibly be able to kick out? Of course, that'd be the finish, and Bam Bam would go over. It's a massive part like of ECW, isn't it? I thought, Taz did a great job telling that story. I love that.
Yeah, it really fun, like, kind of like.
Did you enjoy the trivia notes of his son, who looks exactly like him, being known? Why did they include his full name, Scott Colton Bigelow? I mean, nobody tells CM Punk. Like, they could have just called him Scott Bigelow. I feel like that was the filmmakers playing a rib on us all. Like, so we all noticed his name, Scott Colton.
Would he have done a cartwheel the other week when they were in New Jersey in celebration? I don't think he would have done. He'd have probably like just burned some of his fucking clothes or something like that instead, if he'd known about it. That was very absolute unit. that lad as well. Absolute units.
Seen a lot of unit sons, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
While LA Park shit sons all over Mexican TV, and we could get some of these lads from Dark Side. Start a little promotion with them, JP.
Oh, exactly. Like it should also have like the McMahon nephews in like a picture above it, because they're the All Japan tag team we just never got to experience. Like their run, Rhodes lads, they're fucking units, absolute units. But yeah, if you like it, this has been
his wife came across well as well. Sorry, just quickly,
Yes,
like I thought she was in the way she told the story, it was like there's clearly a lot of like hurt feelings there, and a lot of like sad stories about how, you know, when the drugs took over, you know, he just pretty much disappeared, started letting down his kids, you know, let her down and ruined everything. And she's quite like, I thought she was very well, like, I don't know what the word would be, like, just well put together, well, just seems to be handling it well at this point in her life, where she could detach the two things, and she's happy to talk about like what a great man he was at the time, what a great dad he was, even giving credit to, you know, what a great wrestler he was, and also compartmentalizing the fact that, yeah, it was unfortunately the pain meds and, you know, the dodgy doctors, which is a common theme in Dark Side, that they kind of grabbed hold of him. And, you know, she seems to be able to separate the fact that he wasn't, you know, himself near the end. And that's you know, that's what's weird about these shows. It's like we watched them. It's like that was what we're missing with the Abbey one. It is almost a celebration of who Bam Bam was.
Yes.
It has to live up to its name as a documentary, and then you get to the death side, and it is really, you know, just another one of the 50 million stories like that happened, like with the 80s and 90s wrestlers. And, you know, when you see his wife and you see the kids and stuff kind of telling that story, it does hit home.
Yeah, it does. And like it's one of the things where when it comes, it seems like even though they separated, she has nothing but really nice things to say. I mean, I do think in terms of next week's Dark Side of the Ring, it's Bash of the Beach 2000. I have ultra low expectations for that, because I'm not even sure Hulk Hogan would be involved in it. In which case, what's the fucking point? Because it'd just be Vince Russo lying.
Oh, like, we've nailed that. No, next week it's a Matty show. We're doing WWE pay-per-view and Bash at the Beach 2000. It's gonna be an all-time spotlight next week. Might even do some matches announced for All In. That's perfect. That's lined up. That could not have lined up better.
Really couldn't for that one. And then the week after that is Marty Jannetty, and God knows what we're getting there.
Free pills for autographs, Chris Elliott. I don't think that's a title suggestion, but I think it's it could be one. But that's basically what was happening back then, wasn't it, with the Mark Doctors? But yeah, I'm looking forward to the last couple of episodes. You know, yeah, Jeff making an appearance on it. I'm sure he's a man who's everywhere at the minute, so get that too as well. But yeah, great season so far. I think that, you know, it's like a couple of weird episodes to finish on, but I think as long as they stick the land in it, this is probably the best Dark Side of the Ring series, I think, apart from the first one.
Think so.
Good stuff.
I was going to say the first one. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but it's definitely.
Plus, it was new, and there's that, isn't there? Yeah, we hadn't seen it all before.
They're probably stories that we were all generally familiar with. We were just waiting for someone to make a documentary out of them. Now we're into the point of actually we don't know as much about this, so it's interesting things that you can go into as well.
Definitely. Anything else you want to mention? Anything else you've seen, watched, want to talk about? Any other subjects?
That's it. I think that's it for this week.
There we go.
I've got a couple of even pre-show titles in here. Exactly. We've got Prime Drama for Points for there. Brandon Nakazawa, possibly.
That's a good one. I like that one. Bang Average Stevenson, Starving Ben Carter. Colt Cabana Bigelow, maybe, is another one up there. I've got noted down. You'll find out, I suppose, as you listen to this. You'll already know what we went with. But yeah, that's pretty much it, really. Like I say, other than that, obviously, you know, we did announce a lot of changes to our patrons over the weekend, so a lot to compute. But essentially, you know, things are mostly the same. Just might get a slightly shorter spotlight. Dynamite talk on weekend show. Pre-show's its own thing. A few different things going on, but same old grapple, really. So yeah, what's a reminder of what's going on the Patreon this week into this month, JP? What can people expect?
So this week we're going to have at the weekend mixtape best SummerSlam matches in there. Me, Matty, and Gareth have picked ours. There's going to be a poll going up tomorrow, which is going to choose the other two matches that we're going to be watching for that as well. We had King of the Mountain, Conor O'Loughlin, come on onto the pre-show, tell us about his announcement of Christian's running TNA, which is going to be wild. Then it's all roads leads to All In It. Because we're doing a live show on the 27th, and as part of like kind of a couple of things we're going to go through, we've got a special edition of Observe This and Flashback, both covering sort of that all-in period and all the various things that were going on at that point in time. I've even put together a little pack of stuff that was like the pre-show videos they've done and stuff like that, that hopefully we'll get into those. Yeah, and we're doing a sold-out live show. So
oh yeah, that's it.
Plenty going on.
Definitely. Yeah, this, and obviously, yeah, I won't be on the weekend show this week on the Patreon. Matthew will be filling in for me, and you guys will be doing the SummerSlam shows. Yeah, I'll be away. I've got a top secret mission on Wednesday, which the patrons know about. Am I getting on the BT bus? Maybe. And then at the weekend I will be at the 229. So yeah, looking forward to being there as well. So if you are,
I think I'm going to be there.
Around, give us a shout.
Even Charlie's going to be there.
Oh, they booked a match perfect for you. Sunshine Machine against Subculture. A couple of JP favorites against each other there. I say that like with no irony that it used to be.
No irony.
Bit of that's a JP derby, is that not, that match?
I think, trust me, there would have been a point in time that match would have meant me going for a pint, or a smoke. I've got a kid, so that's going to be a little bit difficult with a newborn baby. But also, I think this is all of them are grown. I'm looking forward to that match already. Sounds cracking.
There we go. So if you're around, we'll be at the 229 on Sunday. But if you see us about London ways the weekend, do say hello as well. But that sums up for another Spotlight Live patrons. As we mentioned earlier, we are going to log off now. Expect an extended post show over on the weekend show on Friday as well. So we're going to sign off. Thank you, folks, for tuning in live. Thank you for everybody listening or watching on the YouTube replay on Tuesday afternoon. But all I've got to say outside that is thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you again on Spotlight next week.
Bye.
See ya.